One cryptid from every state. Hey everyone, it's been a while since I've made a cryptid video, so I thought why not bring it back with an almost 3-hour special. And here's a little twist. Instead of just choosing the most popular ones from each state, I try to choose ones that are a bit more obscure, meaning not really the typical ones like Bigfoot, Nessie, or Mothman. So I hope you all stay tuned for some really interesting cryptids. Anyways, I'm really excited for the video, so let's just jump straight into it. Washington, giant laundry room shrimp. In 1948, Virginia Staples reported an encounter with a really odd creature in Bremerton, Washington, which is a city known for its connection to naval operations and shipyards. At the time, Staples lived in an apartment building located on Denny Street, which, according to her, had a really extensive basement. The basement, as she told, featured large gaping holes in the walls, leading to rumors that they might have been connected directly to the nearby waters of Puget Sound. Bremerton, an old town with buildings tightly packed together, is not really a stranger to unusual tales, but Staples' experience is probably among the strangest recorded in the Pacific Northwest. On the day of her encounter, Staples had gone to the basement to hang her laundry. She felt a strange sensation right away, like an awareness that something or someone was there watching her. This feeling persisted until she finally turned to face the rear of the basement. What she saw next left her frozen. According to her account, standing in one of the massive holes in the wall was a creature as tall as she was, about 5 feet in height. It had a bright orange body, thin spidery legs, and moving antennae on its head, an appearance that immediately reminded her of a shrimp, but of course one of really big proportions. Terrified, Staples fled the basement, packed her belongings, and moved to Seattle to live with a relative. In the following years, the experience really haunted her, causing her a lot of recurring nightmares. Staples eventually sought to make sense of what she had seen by visiting an aquarium. The only thing she could find that resembled the creature, though, was of course a shrimp, but a much smaller version of the horrifying creature that she actually encountered. When she finally returned to Bremerton years later, she discovered that the apartment building on Denny Street had now been torn down, likely during an expansion of the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. This aspect of the story adds some layer of mystery, since there's little evidence of Navy expansion on Denny Street, which is distant from the shipyard itself. Yet, the absence of the apartment building only deepened the cryptic nature of her whole experience, since it erased any trace of the location where she claimed to have encountered the shrimp. Staples then ended up sharing her story with Strange magazine in the 1990s, where it was featured in issue number 6 under the section First Person. This section published unverified accounts of strange experiences, placing Staples' narrative among a collection of a bunch of weird tales. Although her story right now remains unverified, it still interested a lot of cryptozoologists and paranormal phenomena enthusiasts. Among them is Garrett Kelly, who's taken interest in investigating the case. Kelly, who's a liminal cartographer and researcher of strange happenings, stumbled upon Staples' story while searching for unique local lore after moving to Bremerton. Kelly's efforts to uncover more information about Staples and her encounter led him to consult census data and reach out to potential descendants, but so far his search has hit a dead end. The only phone number he found for a possible relative ended up being disconnected, and a letter he sent went unanswered. Despite these setbacks though, Kelly believes that Shrimpy, as he now calls it, deserves more recognition and could even become a symbol of Bremerton's cryptid folklore. He's even approached state lawmakers, including Senator Emily Randall, to champion Shrimpy as Washington's official cryptid, a role that's long been associated with Bigfoot. Randall, herself a Bremerton native, has expressed openness to the idea, but her brother's affinity for Sasquatch may sway her loyalties. Kansas, Sinkhole Sam. In the 1950s, 2 men fishing at Inman Lake in Kansas reported seeing a really unusual creature lurking near the sinkhole that gives the lake its name. They described it as a massive worm-like animal, roughly 15 feet long and as thick as an automobile tire. The local community was understandably freaked out by this whole sighting, but it wasn't the last report of the creature, which became known as Sinkhole Sam. Shortly after the first sighting, Albert Newfield and George Rager also claimed to have seen the creature, confirming the earlier account. The area around Inman Lake wasn't always this dry though. Before European colonization, Kansas was covered in lakes, rivers, and streams, many of which have now dried up or been blocked off, leaving behind only a few natural bodies of water like Inman Lake. Some locals theorize that Sinkhole Sam is a prehistoric holdover from a time when Kansas was submerged by water, living in underground caverns connected to the lake. They believe that Sam somehow emerged from these flooded caverns, which remain largely unexplored. Theories about Sam's origins suggest he could be a remnant of a time when the western interior seaway covered much of what is now the central United States over 66 million years ago. This vast body of water supported a wide variety of aquatic life, from marine reptiles to massive fish. However, none of the creatures found in Kansas fossil records match Sam's description, leaving many to speculate about what it really is. Over the years, sightings of Sam have also gone down, leaving people to wonder whether he retreated back into the caverns or maybe even died. However, in the 1960s, reports of a similar creature surfaced 50 miles south at Kingman State Lake, which is actually a man-made body of water. Several eyewitnesses claimed to have seen a large snake-like creature in the area, with some stating that it was the size of a python, while others suggested it was too large for a tractor to run over. Despite all this heightened interest though and a large search for the creature, only known native species of snakes were found. The snake in Kingman State Lake was never given a proper name, but many believe it could be the same species as Sinkhole Sam or even Sam himself, having moved between the lakes. And in terms of scientific theories, some cryptozoologists have proposed that Sinkhole Sam could be an amphibian, possibly maybe a distinct relative of prehistoric salamanders. However, neither of any specific species that people propose exactly match Sam's reported size and characteristics. Georgia Raptor. The Georgia Raptor is a creature said to look like a dinosaur, specifically a troodontid type dino. Described as having a long, stiff tail, sharp claws, and walking on 2 feet, it's one of the more distinct and obscure cryptids to come out of Georgia, which is why I thought I should add it. It all started on July 25, 2008, when an 18-year-old man and his grandfather were out on a typical hunting trip for the pair. The quiet forest sounds filled the air as they ventured onto the rocky road leading to one of the grandfather's usual deer watching spots. It was 3:30 in the morning, and as the two moved silently through the Georgia woodland, they suddenly heard a noise they couldn't identify, a sound different from the usual rustling of leaves or wildlife calls. The young man immediately glanced at his grandfather, who right away signaled for them to remain still. They listened closely, and then, emerging from the bushes about 150 yards in front of them, a creature stepped onto the road. The grandson was frozen in place, not really with fear, but with amazement at what he saw. According to his description, it looked exactly like the raptors from the Jurassic Park movies. Standing around 5 feet tall at the shoulders, the creature had a stiff tail, walked on 2 feet, and possessed short arms with claws. Its feet, too, bore large curved claws, while its head, raised slightly, seemed to be sniffing the air as if trying to catch their scent. The young man recalled, as he quoted, "It had a long, stiff tail, walked on 2 feet, and had short arms. It looked lizard-like and had a huge claw on both of its feet and smaller claws on its arms." The two men remained completely still, realizing that the creature seemed fast and could easily reach them if it wanted to. The animal though eventually turned back toward the bushes after sniffing the air and disappeared into the darkness, leaving them simply just watching there. The young man's exact words from the account were, "I just froze because I thought things like that lived many thousands of years ago." It made these sounds again and turned around and ran off into the bushes. So yeah, they waited for what felt like forever before they felt safe enough to quietly make their way back to the truck. Once inside, they discussed the encounter, but decided not to tell anyone, fearing they'd be thought of as crazy, especially by the young man's grandmother. The young man, who had never believed in paranormal stories before, found himself reconsidering his views. He remained convinced of what he had seen, saying, "Since that encounter, I believe in creatures that science doesn't know about. That's my story, as odd as it sounds, I know what I saw." Cryptid enthusiasts have speculated that if this sighting were credible, it could point to an undiscovered species or perhaps a surviving remnant of a prehistoric era, though such theories are speculative at best without any physical evidence. West Virginia, the Vegetable Man. So this is, in my opinion, one of the most interesting ones, and it all started in July 1968 when a hunter named Jennings Frederick had an encounter in the backwoods near Fairmont, West Virginia that he would never forget. While he was out looking for woodchucks, Frederick heard a bizarre, high-pitched sound that he would later compare to a recording running too fast. When he looked up, he saw something he could hardly believe, a strange creature that appeared to be part human, part plant. According to Frederick's account, which was later chronicled by Brad Steiger in his 1978 book Alien Meetings, the creature stood tall and green with long ears and yellow slanted eyes. Frederick described its thin, plant-like body as having arms no thicker than a quarter. The creature's fingers were also long and thorn-like, with what appeared to be syringe-like tips. But this is where it gets even more weird. The entity then spoke to Frederick, though not with its voice. Instead, Frederick somehow translated the creature's rapid jabbering into a telepathic message, which was, "You need not fear me. I wish to communicate. I come as a friend. We know you all. I come in peace. I wish medical assistance. I need your help." Despite these words of peace, what happened next left Frederick both shocked and scarred. Before Frederick could react, the creature wrapped its tendril-like fingers around his hand with a surprising amount of strength. The thorn-like appendages pierced his skin, sending a wave of pain through his arm. As blood began to drain from his body, the creature's eyes turned from yellow to a swirling pattern of orange, seemingly hypnotizing Frederick and alleviating his pain. This lasted only a short time, perhaps less than 2 minutes, but for Frederick, it felt much longer. After the creature had extracted what it needed, it released Frederick and sprinted up a nearby hill, covering nearly 25 feet with each step. Once the entity disappeared over the crest, Frederick snapped out of his daze, feeling the intense pain return to his punctured hand. As he fled the scene, he heard a deep humming noise from the other side of the hill. He later speculated that it might have been the creature's spaceship taking off. Fearing ridicule, Frederick initially kept the encounter a secret, like many others. However, several years later, he revealed the full story to Gray Barker, a noted paranormal investigator. Barker, famous for his work on cases like the Flatwoods Monster and the Mothman, published his account in a 1976 newsletter. Despite Frederick's encounter being the only known sighting of this creature, which would later become known as the Vegetable Man, its strange details have kept the story alive in cryptid lore. And something interesting is this wasn't Frederick's first brush with the unknown. Years earlier, his mother reportedly saw a demonic figure, referred to as the Space Devil. While no one else has reported seeing the Vegetable Man till that day, Frederick's story remains one of the most unusual cryptid encounters on record. Wyoming, Ausso One. So another really interesting one, and this one happened on October 25th, 1974 in northern Medicine Bow National Park, Wyoming. Carl Higdon, a 41-year-old oil well driller, husband, and father of 4, decided to take the day off to hunt elk, not knowing that this day would bring him face to face with a cryptid being that would alter his life forever. While hunting, Higdon came across a group of elk and silently prepared his rifle, aiming at the largest bull. But when he pulled the trigger, something strange happened, being that there was no recoil. To his amazement, the sound of the rifle was completely silent, and he could actually see the bullet slowly exit the barrel as if it was traveling through some sort of invisible jelly. It moved about 50 feet before dropping to the snow-covered ground, and when Higdon later retrieved it, he found that the lead tip of the bullet had disappeared, leaving only a misshapen case. As Higdon was trying to make sense of this whole thing, a humanoid figure suddenly approached him. The being, about 6 feet tall and covered in a black skin-tight suit, casually asked him, "How you doing?" Trying to stay calm, Higdon responded, "Pretty good." The being, who introduced himself as Ausso One, then inquired if Higdon was hungry, and without waiting for a response, sent a small cellophane package containing 4 pills floating toward him. Ausso One told Higdon that if he consumed the pills, he would not need to eat for 4 days. Higdon was left in shock, staring at the strange box-like craft that was sitting in the clearing behind the cryptid. Ausso One, noticing Higdon's curiosity, asked, "Do you want to come along?" Without fully understanding what was happening, Higdon shrugged and agreed. In an instant, Higdon's memory seemed to skip forward, and his next recollection was of being inside the cube-shaped craft. Ausso One then took him on a brief tour of his home planet, though Higdon later admitted that much of the experience was a blur. He did recall strange details though about his whole appearance, being that the creature had no lips, ears, or hands, but instead had sort of like a drill-like appendage on one wrist and nothing at all on the other. Its head was covered in coarse, straw-like hair, and it had only 3 large teeth in its mouth. After what seemed like a short time, Higdon found himself back in the forest, disoriented and confused. He didn't remember much about the journey back, but he felt like he had been returned to the same spot from where he had been taken. The elk he had been hunting was now gone, and he left alone in the quiet wilderness, with only the strange bullet and the pills as evidence of his experience. So yeah, despite the outlandish nature of his story, Higdon still maintained that it was true. He even passed a polygraph test when questioned about the encounter. Skeptics, however, were really quick to label the sighting a hoax, though no evidence has ever come out to support this claim. Oklahoma, El Reno Chickenman. Oklahoma's abominable Chickenman is a cryptid that made headlines in December of 1960 after a farmer in El Reno discovered his chicken coop had been violently torn apart during the night. It was discovered that the door had been ripped from its hinges, and unusual handprints were found both on the door and inside the coop. These prints were pretty large, measuring about 7.5 inches long and 4.18 inches wide, and their odd shape suggested that no normal creature could have caused the damage. Unsure of what creature could be responsible, the farmer contacted a local game warden who, after examining the scene, decided to involve the Oklahoma City Zoo for further investigation. Zoo director Lawrence Curtis inspected the prints and determined they were made by a primate, though with unusual characteristics. The thumb appeared deformed, curving inward, which Curtis remarked made it look similar to a gorilla's hand, but with a distinctly human-like quality. This led to the conclusion that the creature responsible was walking on all fours, something humans don't typically do. While other potential culprits like bears or mountain lions were considered, none really matched the size or characteristics of the prints left behind. The mystery only deepened when an Associated Press reporter interested by the story coined the term Oklahoma's abominable Chickenman in an article that quickly spread across the country. The name stuck, and soon letters from all over the US flooded Curtis's office. People sent in photographs and drawings of similar prints they'd encountered in other parts of the country, and there was especially interest coming from the Pacific Northwest, where Bigfoot sightings had already gained attention. Among the most interesting accounts from this was a letter from Springdale, Arkansas. The writer claimed to have seen 3 large, hairy creatures, each around 6 feet tall and incredibly strong, one even toppling a tree. In this area, strange animal deaths had also been reported, fueling some speculation that whatever happened before was responsible for this. As word of the Chickenman spread even more and more Oklahoma residents came forward with their own stories. In Stillwater, about 100 miles northeast of El Reno, a man reported seeing similar prints, while a woman in McAllister, located 150 miles southeast, sent Curtis a photograph of prints she had discovered. The distances between these locations suggested the creature, if it was real, was either part of a larger group or extremely mobile. Curtis, when asked about this in specific, joked around and remarked that if there was only one creature, it must be hitchhiking. Curtis kept the chicken coop door in his office for years, using it as both a reference and a conversation piece, though he was never able to definitively identify the creature responsible for the damage. Despite the passage of nearly 6 decades, the mystery of Oklahoma's abominable Chickenman still remains unsolved, with occasional reports of similar hairy creatures still surfacing across the state. Oregon, Devil's Lake Monster. The Devil's Lake Monster, also known as Miniwashitu in the Sioux language, meaning mystery or bad spirit, is an aquatic cryptid believed to reside in Devil's Lake, located north of Lincoln City, Oregon. Over the years, a lot of accounts have surfaced of a massive octopus-like creature that reportedly dragged people into the lake's depths. Some Native American legends even liken the creature to a plesiosaur. A little history on the lake itself. Devil's Lake was formed during the last ice age and is a mist-covered body of brackish water. The Dakota Sioux, who originally named the lake Miniwashitu, viewed it as a place of mystery and danger. Their tales of the lake warned of a fearsome creature lurking beneath the surface, responsible for the deaths of many who dared cross its waters. One of the most well-known stories dates back to a time when a Native American chief led a group of young warriors on a night hunting expedition across the lake. As they paddled under the full moon, large tentacles erupted from the water, capsizing their canoe and dragging the men into the depths. None survived. Their desperate cries brought the rest of the tribe rushing to the shoreline, where they witnessed the whole scene under the moonlight. Following this tragedy, the tribe began an annual tradition of offering gifts and sacrifices to the lake to appease what they believed to be a demonic entity living within. This tradition still exists today, though it's now celebrated as a local festival honoring tribal legends and customs. And this isn't the only cryptid that's associated, with offering gifts and sacrifices to the lake. And the idea of a killer freshwater octopus may sound a little far-fetched, but reports of this creature in the lake have still persisted. For example, Christian missionaries who arrived in the area in the 1800s were told by the Dakota people about another strange creature. Basically, during a period of extreme drought, the lake shrank, leaving a large fish-like beast, which the Dakota called Hakua, stranded on a muddy strip of land. For days, the tribe watched the creature struggle to return to the deeper waters, but no one dared approach, believing it to be a vile offspring of the evil spirit Unk and the lizard beast Ungekti. Eventually, the creature freed itself and disappeared back into the depths. The lake's history didn't just stop there though. It continued even to more modern times. On March 4th, 1950, a local girl named Mary Bell Alum discovered a strange carcass washed ashore on the beach west of the lake. The remains, which the locals nicknamed Old Harry, were described as weighing about 1,000 pounds and measuring 22 feet in length. The body had the form of a cow, was covered in hair, and featured 9 tails. Despite various ideas about what the carcass might have been, no one has been able to properly identify it, leading some to believe it may have been a remnant of the Devil's Lake monster itself. Illinois, the Enfield Horror. The Enfield Horror is a cryptid that made its first known appearance in the small town of Enfield, Illinois on April 25, 1973. The strange events began when a young boy named Greg Garrett encountered the creature in his own backyard. Garrett described the entity as having 3 legs, slimy gray skin, short claws, and glowing red eyes. The creature attacked him, stomping on his feet with its clawed appendages, damaging his shoes before the boy managed to escape. Shortly after Garrett's experience, a neighbor named Henry McDaniel reported his own encounter with the mysterious being. McDaniel, returning home that night, heard strange scratching sounds at his door. At first, he assumed it was an animal, but when he opened the door, he was confronted by a creature that shocked him to his core. Standing before him was a gray humanoid figure with 3 legs, short arms protruding from its chest, and large pink eyes. McDaniel later described the being as about 4.5 feet tall, with a body unlike anything he had ever seen. Reacting quickly, McDaniel grabbed his .22 caliber pistol and fired at the creature. Although he was certain that he hit it, the entity simply hissed like a wildcat and bounded away, covering an estimated 50 feet in just 3 leaps before vanishing into the nearby woods. McDaniel immediately called the local authorities, but when the Illinois State Troopers arrived, they could find no trace of the creature except for the strange scratches on McDaniel's house and weird footprints in the yard. The prints were unlike anything they had encountered, with 6-toed dog-like impressions and an indication that the creature had 3 feet, one print noticeably smaller than the others. Several weeks after McDaniel's first encounter, he reported seeing the creature again. This time, it was moving along the nearby railroad tracks, seemingly unfazed and unhurried. McDaniel didn't fire at the entity during this sighting, but merely watched it until it disappeared once again. News of the Enfield horror then spread rapidly, sparking a lot of media attention and leading to a flurry of amateur monster hunters descending on the town, all eager to catch a glimpse of the creature. Some groups even claimed to have encountered the beast, firing upon it without any noticeable effect. One group of young men reported that the creature they saw was covered in hair, which added some more detail to its already weird description. The final recorded sighting came from Rick Rainbow, a news director from Kokomo, Indiana. Rainbow and 3 others claimed to have seen a gray, stooped, 5-foot-tall figure near an abandoned house not far from where McDaniel's encounters had occurred. Though they didn't really get as close as previous witnesses, Rainbow managed to record the creature's really creepy scream. This recording caught the attention of renowned cryptozoologist Loren Coleman, who traveled to Enfield to investigate. Coleman interviewed the witnesses, examined the evidence, and even heard the cries of the creature while conducting his research. In his reflections, Coleman compared the Enfield horror case to others he had investigated, noting that while it shared similarities with creatures like the Dover Demon and even phantom kangaroo sightings, the Enfield horror stood out because of its strange anatomy and aggressive behavior. Some investigators have speculated that the creature might be linked to UFO sightings in the area around the same time, suggesting a possible extraterrestrial connection. But despite the media frenzy and numerous attempts to track it down, the Enfield horror vanished as mysteriously as it appeared. No sightings have been reported since the 1970s, leaving its true nature and origin a subject of ongoing debate. Missouri, Tuscumbia Space Penguins. The Tuscumbia Space Penguins encounter was a reported cryptid sighting that occurred on the morning of February 14, 1967 in Tuscumbia, Missouri. On that cold morning, Claude Edwards, a 64-year-old farmer, set out to complete his daily chores, unaware of what was in store later that day. As he trudged through the field, the first odd thing that caught his attention was the behavior of his cattle. They were all staring oddly in the same direction. Following their gaze, he noticed something out of place in a nearby field, which was a large grayish-green object that resembled a giant mushroom perched atop a circular base. Intrigued but cautious at the same time, Edwards continued his approach, with his eyes never leaving the object. As he moved closer, he saw what would later be described as one of the strangest entities in cryptozoological lore. It was a group of small 3-foot-tall creatures scurrying around the base of the UFO. These beings had a strange penguin-like appearance with no visible necks and what appeared to be grayish-green skin. Their movements were frantic, and although Edwards couldn't make out whether they had hands or not, he noticed that their arms moved rapidly as they darted back and forth beneath the craft. Edwards was not one to be easily frightened, nor did he have much interest in stories of extraterrestrial visitors. But as he stood there watching these strange creatures, he felt a sense of unease. Undeterred, and perhaps out of a farmer's instinct to protect his property, Edwards picked up 2 rocks and began walking toward the craft, determined to get a closer look and possibly even test whether the ship was real or not. As he approached the UFO, now just 15 feet away, Edwards was met with an invisible barrier, an unseen force that prevented him from moving any closer. He described it as a sort of wall that he couldn't see or feel, but that stopped him in his tracks. Despite this, he still managed to get a good look at the craft. The top of the object was smooth and metallic, with a dome that was about 18 feet in diameter. Around the base of the dome were evenly spaced oval-shaped portals, each about 12 inches wide. From these portals, brilliant multicolored lights emanated, spinning and shifting in a way that reminded Edwards of a color wheel. Determined to test the ship, Edwards threw one of his rocks at the craft, only to watch it bounce off the invisible barrier and land silently on the ground. He threw his second rock with more force, but this one merely skimmed over the top of the craft and landed in the field beyond it. As soon as he did though, the small creatures scurried out of sight, disappearing behind the base of the ship. It was at this point that the UFO itself began to move. The entire object tilted twice before lifting off the ground and ascending silently into the sky. Within seconds, it was gone, heading toward the nearby town of St. Elizabeth, Missouri. The encounter, which lasted no more than 10 minutes, left Edwards standing in the field, stunned and unsure of what he had just seen. Edwards, a pragmatic man with no interest in gaining publicity from the event, later recounted his experience to UFO investigator Ted Phillips. He described the craft in a lot of detail, noting that it looked like shiny silk, as he quoted, and that the area where the base of the ship had touched the ground was dehydrated, leaving a distinct 1 meter wide circle of dry soil. But yeah, despite all this, Edwards never really saw fame or financial gain from his story. In fact, he only agreed to speak with Phillips on the condition that his identity would remain anonymous until after his death. This reluctance to share his story further added some credibility to his account. Kentucky, Beast of the Land Between the Lakes. The Beast of the Land Between Lakes is a cryptid reported to have been sighted in the Land Between the Lakes National Recreation Area, which spans parts of Kentucky and Tennessee. Described as a large wolf-like creature standing over 7 feet tall, it's said to walk on 2 legs and have human-like hands ending in sharp claws. The creature's most notable features included glowing eyes and massive jaws, which are said to be really capable of crushing prey easily. Numerous stories and legends have surrounded this creature for generations, and these tales span across time, cultures, and individual accounts. One of the earliest legends tied to the beast speaks of a Native American shape-shifting entity. Another account, which emerged in the 1800s, tells the story of a European settler who came to the region between the rivers. It was said that this man, or his descendants, suffered from a mysterious disease that drove them to madness at night. Living in seclusion for years, the family eventually disappeared, and their home was discovered abandoned in the early 1900s. Some believe that whatever caused their disappearance is maybe linked to the present-day sightings of the beast. Going a little further back, in the time of early American expansion, French explorers in the area were reportedly warned by Shawnee fur traders about a creature known as the loup-garou, which was a wolf-like beast. Another story suggests that the creature could be the spirit of a Shawnee shaman, killed while in his wolf form after misusing his powers. This spirit is said to still haunt the woods, seeking revenge for his death. Accounts of the beast during this specific period describe hunters going missing, only to have their bodies later found mutilated. Bison, which once roamed the area, were occasionally found slaughtered, with their carcasses bearing the marks of enormous claws. This pattern of animal mutilations persisted into modern times, with herd managers even now reporting that calves sometimes go missing and that the rest of the herd will stick together for days afterward, spooked by something lurking in the woods. In 1973, a group of Murray State University students reportedly had an encounter while camping in the land between the lakes. Sitting around a campfire on a warm spring evening, one student ventured into the woods but quickly returned, freaked out by the feeling of being watched and hearing something sniffling nearby. Initially dismissing his fears as paranoia, the group soon found themselves surrounded by something large moving around their campsite. They heard shuffling in the leaves and began to see glimpses of glowing red eyes in the darkness. The situation escalated though, as they heard loud, unnatural howls that seemed to echo from all directions, louder than any wolf they had ever heard. Feeling really creeped out by now, the students retreated to the Volkswagen bus, but the creature wasn't done with them yet. As they sped away, they noticed a massive figure chasing their vehicle, but barely visible in the taillights. They felt a powerful jolt as if the creature had grabbed the bus. When they finally broke free and returned to campus, they discovered deep claw marks etched into the metal of the bus's engine compartment. And another story too surfaced in the 1980s when a family camping in a motorhome at the land between the lakes was allegedly found slaughtered. According to local accounts, police arrived at a scene so gruesome it was said to have been covered up to protect the area's tourism industry. And now, onto the present, reports of strange howls, encounters, and missing livestock still continue to this day. Some experienced hunters even avoid the area, while those unfamiliar with the local lore return with tales of feeling stalked or watched. Occasionally, park rangers even receive reports of nests found deep in the woods where large tufts of fur are discovered. In the late 1980s, a gate even ended up being installed at a location called Moss Creek after what some believe was another attack by the beast. Although the official reason given for closing the area to overnight camping was a random stabbing, locals tell a different story, one involving shredded clothing and blood discovered at the scene. Despite repeated denials by officials, many locals continue to insist that something dangerous roams the forests of the land between the lakes. Joshua Thompson, whose mother Janet Thompson was one of the original eyewitnesses to the beast, continues to share her story. Her encounter was documented in Bart Nunnally's film Hunt the Dogman, where she described the creature she saw firsthand. The artistic rendering of the beast, based on her description, remains one of the most vivid visual representations of this cryptid. Speculation still really continues though regarding what it actually could be. Some believe it might just be a natural predator, perhaps a cryptid yet to be recognized by science. Others, though influenced by accounts of paranormal occurrences and supernatural encounters, believe it may be something more than just an undiscovered animal. Various sources debate whether the beast is linked to the dogman or werewolf legends like the loup-garou of French folklore. Even now though, with increasing modern documentation and accounts, the mystery still remains unsolved. Minnesota, giant millipede. In the summer of 2018, a truck driver named Alan, age 51, was driving on a US highway in central Minnesota. Alan had been driving trucks for over 20 years and considered himself highly skeptical of supernatural things, claiming to only believe in things he had personally experienced. Despite this attitude though, Alan was certain about what he witnessed that day, a cryptid unlike anything he had ever seen before. While traveling on the highway during the middle of the day, Alan spotted a strange creature emerging from the ditch on the north side of the road. The creature crossed 2 lanes of traffic, including the shoulders, and disappeared into the tall weeds and grasses of the median. What Alan saw was not easily dismissed as debris or something blowing in the wind. The way it moved with purpose suggested otherwise. The creature's movements were deliberate, as if it was consciously trying to avoid being seen. Alan had a clear view of the creature from just 100 feet away, and it left a pretty strong impression on him. Alan described the creature as being about 4 feet long with a cylindrical body that was around 3.5 inches in diameter. The entire body was covered in short brown fur, and its most unusual feature was its head, which resembled an inverted cone. Alan compared it to the shape of a paper cone cup, with the wide part facing outward where a mouth would typically be, and the inside of the cone lined with the same short brown fur. Despite its resemblance to a giant millipede though, the creature had no visible legs. Alan was certain of this because he could see the air beneath its body as it crossed the road, moving quickly and smoothly, kinda like a field mouse in full sprint. The creature's movement made Alan question whether it was an animal or something else entirely. It didn't undulate or roll, instead it hovered slightly above the ground, crossing the road with controlled forward momentum. Alan was convinced that what he saw was not a natural animal. Its form and motion suggested something sort of mechanical, almost like a machine designed to mimic life. He even speculated whether it could have been an alien probe or a creature from another dimension. But yeah, Alan was super certain that the creature was real. He acknowledged how unbelievable the story might sound, but he still stood by his account, claiming it was not a piece of trash blown by the wind, but something very real. He emphasized that it didn't roll, bounce, or behave like an inanimate object. He also said that its movement had a clear sense of direction and purpose as it disappeared into the vegetation. Even now, he reflects on the incident, searching for an explanation for what he saw. California, Old Man of Monterey Bay. The monster of Monterey Bay, also known as Bobo or the Old Man of Monterey Bay, has interested the residents of California's central coast for almost a century. Stories of this creature have been circulating since the 1920s, and while many question the truth behind these sightings, the tales still continue to cause a lot of discussion. Unlike other legendary sea creatures like the Loch Ness or the Kraken, Bobo has its roots more in the local lore there. The legend traces back to a foggy morning in 1925 when the remains of an unknown creature were found washed ashore on Moores Beach in Santa Cruz. The carcass, which became a local sensation, was estimated to be between 30 and 50 feet in length. The most remarkable feature was its long serpentine neck, reaching up to 30 feet, with a head that many witnesses likened to that of a duck. It had a barrel-shaped body, what appeared to be thick elephant-like legs with ivory toenails, and a whale-like tail. As news of the discovery spread, curious onlookers flocked to the beach to witness the spectacle firsthand. Theories about the origin of the carcass immediately began to circulate. Some believed it could be the remains of a prehistoric plesiosaur. Others speculated it could be an undiscovered species or a deep-sea creature that had never been seen before. A self-proclaimed naturalist, E.L. Wallace, made the bold claim that the creature was indeed a plesiosaur, preserved for centuries in glacial ice before thawing and washing ashore. However, Wallace's identity and credentials were never verified, and his dramatic pronouncement only added to the mystery. Then, scientists from California Academy of Sciences soon arrived on the scene to examine the remains. They carefully removed the creature's head for further analysis and eventually concluded that the carcass most likely belonged to a Barrett's beaked whale, a rare deep-diving species that was little known at the time. While this explanation provided a more grounded understanding, the creature's unusual proportions, especially its long neck and duck-like head, left many locals unconvinced. Even with the official identification, rumors still persisted that the carcass was not just a whale. The lack of teeth, the unusual skin texture, and the creature's flippers, which seemed inconsistent with whale anatomy, fueled ongoing speculation. The mystery of the 1925 discovery quickly became part of the local legend, but it was only the beginning of the sightings that would continue to emerge over the years. As time passed, reports of a large, mysterious creature spotted in Monterey Bay began to surface. Fishermen, sailors, and beachgoers alike claim to have encountered a creature that fit the description of Bobo. One of the most dramatic accounts from this time occurred in the late 1930s when the crew of a sardine fishing boat had a close-up encounter with the creature. The crew described seeing the creature's head rise out of the water, gazing at them with what they described as a mournful expression before disappearing beneath the waves. The sighting left the whole crew freaked out, and their story quickly spread through the local fishing community. Other encounters then followed, each one adding to the collection surrounding Bobo sightings. Sal Coletto, a fisherman who had multiple sightings of the creature, described one particular experience off the coast of Moss Landing where he came face to face with an enormous head, the size of a 50-gallon drum with a distinctive duck-like bill. Convinced the creature was responsible for the disappearance of several local fishermen, Coletto kept his sightings to himself for years, fearful of being labeled as delusional. But the 1940s, Bobo had become a whole phenomenon, with frequent sightings reported in the Santa Cruz Sentinel. Many of these accounts shared a lot of similar details, suggesting the creature surfaced on calm days, often before a storm. Some believed Bobo was also sensitive to changes in air pressure, while others believed it enjoyed basking in the sun before bad weather. But yeah, after that, sightings continued sporadically into the 1960s and beyond, with new reports from sailors, fishermen, and casual beachgoers. Today, the cryptid has sort of become a symbol more than, like a cryptid, with its image appearing in local art, stories, and even sculptures along the Santa Cruz waterfront. While some view the legend with light-hearted affection, there's no denying the lasting fascination that the monster holds for those who've encountered it or heard tales about it. Idaho, Sharlie. The Sharlie cryptid, also known as the Twilight Dragon of Payette Lake, is believed to live in the deep alpine waters near McCall, Idaho. The legend stretches back to the oral traditions of Native American tribes such as the Shoshone and Nez Perce, who spoke of a bad spirit that inhabited the lake's depths. These early stories laid the foundation for what would eventually become one of Idaho's most enduring cryptid legends. In 1920, railroad workers cutting ties at the upper end of Payette Lake reported what they initially believed to be a floating log. To their shock, the so-called log suddenly moved of its own accord, creating a wake as it swam away into deeper waters. This marked the first documented encounter with Sharlie. Over the next few decades, more and more sightings were reported, with fishermen and boaters claiming to see large shapes moving beneath the lake's surface. At first, many of these accounts were dismissed as tall tales or simple misidentifications, but they slowly built the foundation for a much larger legend. The legend gained traction in 1944 when multiple groups of people reported seeing the creature, describing it as 30 to 35 feet in length, with a head reminiscent of a dinosaur, pronounced jaws, and humps along its back like those of a camel. Witnesses also noted its skin appeared shell-like, which was an odd detail that set it apart from any known lake creature. Among those who saw Sharlie that year was Dr. G.A. Taylor of Nampa, Idaho, who described a massive creature diving repeatedly into the lake, leaving a wake similar to that of a motorboat. Taylor's credibility as a medical professional lent authority to his account, making the story difficult to dismiss outright. But yeah, overall, the 1944 sightings put Sharlie into a sort of national spotlight. Media outlets across the country picked up the story, and soon McCall, Idaho became a hub for cryptozoologists, monster hunters, and tourists. The sudden influx of visitors brought a significant economic boost to the small town, with local businesses capitalizing on the mystery. Basically, monster spotting boat tours became a popular attraction, and Sharlie-themed merchandise began to appear in local shops. Previously a vague, somewhat frightening presence, Sharlie was now taking on a more specific form in the public's imagination, with more detailed descriptions transforming the monster into something almost tangible. In 1954, A. Boone McCallum, editor of the Star News, organized a contest to give the lake monster an official name. Until then, the creature had been referred to by various names, including the less than flattering Slimy Slim. The contest drew national attention, with entries pouring in from across the country. Ultimately, the name Sharlie was chosen, submitted by Lee Isle Henneford Turi of Springfield, Virginia, as a playful nod to the popular catchphrase "Was you der Sharlie" from Jack Pro's radio show. So yeah, the new name, which had some sort of humor and charm, transformed Sharlie from a terrifying monster into like a quirky local character. And following this naming contest, Sharlie sightings didn't end, but continued well into the late 20th century. One especially notable sighting occurred in 1956 when Dabney Taylor spotted the creature swimming near his boat, describing it as having a long neck, a small head with horn-like protrusions, and leaving behind a significant wake. In 1985, another wave of sightings reinstated the legend. One of the most notable came from Tom Grote, who claimed to have seen the creature from the air while flying over Payette Lake. Grote described how he seen 3 humps breaking the water surface. For theories and all that sort of stuff, some researchers have theorized that the existence of underwater caves or tunnels in the lake provide Sharlie with a possible hidden habitat. But sonar equipment and underwater cameras have been used in attempts to capture proof, but nothing conclusive has ever been discovered about the whole legend. Utah North Shore Monster. The North Shore Monster, often referred to as Old Briny, is a cryptid believed to inhabit the waters of the Great Salt Lake in Utah. The first documented sighting occurred on July 8, 1877, when J. H. McNeil and his colleagues at the Barnes & Co. Salt Works claimed to encounter a massive creature near the lake's northern shore. According to McNeil, the creature measured about 75 feet long, possessing a crocodile-like body and the head of a horse. As they approached the shore, the beast emitted a terrifying bellow, sending McNeil and his companions fleeing into the nearby mountains where they hid for the night. The next morning, they discovered overturned boulders and disturbed ground along the shoreline, physical signs that something large had indeed been there. And interestingly enough, McNeil's sighting was significant enough for him to sign an affidavit, and the story was published in local newspapers including the Corn Record, the Salt Lake Herald Republican, and the Deseret News. However, the Deseret News suggested readers should view the report with skepticism, proposing that the creature might have been a buffalo rather than a cryptid, though the reported length of 75 feet conflicted with this explanation. The legend of Old Briny resurfaced in 2023 when State Park Ranger Holly Miner shared a story involving 2 hunters on Stansbury Island. The hunters were reportedly chased into a cave by a creature with a crocodile-like body, a horse's head, and a wingspan extending 100 feet. According to Miner, the creature later returned with a cow in its jaws, leaving the hunters to hide in terror throughout the night. But before all of this, earlier reports suggest that stories of strange creatures in the Great Salt Lake predate McNeil's encounter. Around 30 years prior, a man identified as Brother Bainbridge claimed to see a dolphin-like creature near Antelope Island, while another LDS church official, Brother Kimball, reported seeing a porpoise-like animal in the lake on April 19, 1848. These accounts were likely inspired by sightings of large carp or other aquatic creatures in the less salty waters of Farmington Bay. The Great Salt Lake itself presents a unique environmental condition that may have contributed to these sightings. With salinity levels ranging from 3.5 to 8 times that of the ocean, only a few species can thrive in its waters, including brine shrimp and brine flies. Fish, like carp, are only found in the surrounding freshwater wetlands and tributaries. Despite this challenging environment though, the legend of the North Shore Monster still persists, possibly fueled by unusual phenomena or misunderstood natural occurrences. In popular culture too, the monster has taken on different forms. For example, in 1976, filmmaker Mike Cassidy produced The Great Brine Shrimp, a short horror film that depicted a giant shrimp terrorizing Salt Lake City. Though the creature in the film was called Old Briny, it bore little resemblance to the crocodile-like monster described in historical sightings. Arizona Mogollon Monster. The Mogollon monster, often referred to as Arizona's Bigfoot, is a cryptid that has reportedly roamed the central and eastern parts of Arizona for well over a century. Descriptions of this creature bear a lot of resemblance to those of Bigfoot, with sightings primarily concentrated along the Mogollon Rim, a rugged and densely forested area in the state. Standing over 7 feet tall and covered in long dark hair, the Mogollon monster is said to have large, menacing red eyes and emit a foul odor compared to a mix of dead fish, skunk, and decaying vegetation. Anecdotal accounts describe the creature as nocturnal and omnivorous, with a territorial nature that sometimes veers into violence. Witnesses report that it walks with long, deliberate strides, leaving behind large footprints and mimics the sounds of other animals like birds and coyotes. The creature is known for investigating campsites at night, building nests from leaves and twigs, and even hurling stones from hidden locations. One of the more disturbing details reported though is the Mogollon monster's scream, often compared to the cry of a woman in distress. And to get to the sightings, the first documented sighting of the cryptid dates back to 1903, when a man named I.W. Stevens described an encounter near the Grand Canyon. He reported seeing a creature with long white hair and a matted beard, with its talon-like fingers covered with claws several inches long. Stevens also claimed that the monster drank the blood of cougars and threatened him with a club before letting out a horrifying scream. Later sightings, including one in the 1940s from a Boy Scout on a camping trip, reinforced the image of a massive, hairy humanoid roaming the Arizona wilderness. Native American communities, including the White Mountain Apache, have their own stories of encounters with this creature, which they view with a mix of caution and acceptance, acknowledging its presence without romanticizing it. Despite these numerous reports, the scientific community still remains skeptical. Experts point to the possible misidentification of animals like black bears or elk, and some suggest that sightings in the early 20th century could have been attributed to the now extinct grizzly bears that once roamed the region. Montana, Shunka Warakin. The Shunka Warakin sighting occurred in the late 1880s within the Madison Valley, a sparsely settled region where settlers were frequently challenged by the threat of wild predators. One such settler, Israel Amon Hutchins, experienced a collection of strange encounters that led to the killing of a really unusual creature. Initially, Hutchins heard unfamiliar sounds, being a creepy, wailing cry unlike any typical wolf. In one instance, Hutchins ran outside after hearing the noise, only to miss a shot at the creature, accidentally killing one of his cows. The strange predator escaped, but it would not remain elusive for long. On a later occasion, Hutchins spotted the creature again and this time managed to hit it with his rifle. In its final moments, the beast allegedly attempted to attack Hutchins' family, biting through a thick rope before it died. The creature did not resemble a typical wolf, but instead had short legs, a sloped back, and a dark coat with faint stripes, characteristics more similar to a hyena. This physical description immediately sparked local interest, and word of the strange beast quickly spread. Joseph Sherwood, a local store owner and amateur taxidermist, acquired the creature from Hutchins in exchange for a cow. Sherwood, who ran a museum in Henry's Lake, Idaho, mounted the animal and displayed it for years, referring to it as Ringdicus. The stuffed beast remained an exhibit until it mysteriously disappeared around 1980. Aside from an old photograph which appeared in a 1977 book by Hutchins' grandson, no other evidence of the creature existed after its disappearance. Nevertheless, though, the story of the Shunka Warakin continued to grow over the years. Lauren Coleman, a cryptozoologist, later linked the creature to a Iowa Sioux legend of the Shunka Warakin, a mysterious beast that supposedly abducted and killed dogs. Despite the geographic stretch though, since the Sioux did not inhabit the Madison Valley, Coleman speculated that the creature could be connected to the Sioux myth because of its predatory nature and hyena-like appearance. And similar reports of strange large canids continued well into the 20th and 21st centuries. In 1909, a massive wolf-like animal was killed in Boise National Forest, which, upon examination by biologists in Washington, D.C., was found to be unlike any known species. Another sighting too occurred as recently as 2020, when a Pennsylvania man claimed to see a cow-sized hyena-like creature running at high speed. And in 2007, the Shunka Warakin specimen reemerged. Hutchins's grandson, Jack Kirby, discovered that Sherwood's taxidermy collection had been donated to the Idaho Museum of Natural History. Among the exhibits was the original creature, still intact after years of obscurity. Today, the Shunka Warakin remains on display at the Madison Valley History Museum, where it continues to intrigue visitors. One potential follow-up to the Shunka Warakin story took place in May 2018. A Montana farmer shot and killed a strange creature on his property. This animal, with its sloping back, large upright ears, and small paws, raised suspicions. Montana Fish and Wildlife officials were cautious in their assessment, but hinted that the creature might not be a wolf. The internet quickly speculated on its identity, suggesting everything from a dire wolf to a chupacabra. DNA tests, however, revealed that the animal was merely a gray wolf, but with unusual physical characteristics. While the 2018 creature was ultimately identified as a wolf, the original Shunka Warakin remains more mysterious. Descriptions of its hyena-like features and reports of its human-like screams set it apart from ordinary wolves. Although more DNA testing could potentially solve the mystery, the museum and Hutchins's descendants have shown little interest in further examination, allowing the mystery of the Shunka Warakin to persist. Colorado, the Slide Rock Bolter. The Slide Rock Bolter is a creature that has been recounted by workers in the dense forests of North America during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. This cryptid was said to live in the steep mountains of Colorado, but only on slopes with an angle greater than 45 degrees. With an enormous head, small sunken eyes, and a mouth reminiscent of a sculpin fish, the bolter had a unique appearance. Its tail ended in a fluke like a dolphin, complete with large hook-like appendages it used to grip the crests of mountain peaks. The creature was feared, not only for its enormous size and destructive tendencies, but for the menace it posed to tourists and the forest alike. Using the hooks on its tail, it would lie in wait for long periods, perfectly still, watching the valley below. Once it spotted an unsuspecting target, the Slide Rock Bolter would release its grip, allowing gravity to send it hurtling down the mountainside. To increase its speed, it drooled grease from its mouth, ensuring a rapid descent. Entire parties of tourists were said to have been swallowed whole as the creature slid through the forest, with its massive jaws scooping them up along with anything else in its path. The destruction didn't end with human lives though. Forests in the area were devastated as the bolter tore through the landscape, knocking down trees and reducing once thriving spruce-covered slopes to barren wastelands. One of the more well-known incidents involving the cryptid came from a forest ranger who patrolled the region between Ophir Peaks and Lizard Head. Recognizing the threat this creature posed, the ranger devised a plan to trick the bolter into destroying itself. He crafted a dummy dressed as a tourist, complete with a plaid Norfolk jacket and a guidebook to Colorado. Inside, the dummy was packed with explosives, including powder and fulminate caps. The ranger strategically placed the decoy in an open area, hoping to attract the attention of the bolter. Sure enough, after days of waiting on the mountainside, the creature attacked. As the bolter descended rapidly towards the dummy, it triggered the explosives. The resulting blast was so powerful that it flattened half of the buildings in the nearby town of Merico, which were never rebuilt. While the explosion succeeded in killing the bolter, its remains were reportedly scavenged by local buzzards for the rest of the summer. Despite the destruction caused by the creature, sightings of the Slide Rock Bolter have not been reported in modern times. However, its legacy still continues through campfire tales and folklore. Some believe that the bolter evolved to blend in more effectively with the Rocky Mountainsides, hiding in plain sight. Others think the creature may have retreated to more remote areas, waiting for the right moments to reemerge. In later years, the slide rock bolter was reimagined in popular culture. In a 2015 horror-themed remake of the fearsome creature stories, the bolter was depicted as a massive land-dwelling fish, weighing 25,000 pounds and possessing 3 razor-sharp gizzards. This version of the creature was even given a fictional scientific name. New Mexico, Cactus Cat. The Cactus Cat is a creature that comes from the folklore of the American Southwest. Described as a bobcat-like animal, it's said to have thorn-covered fur, sharp bones from its legs, and a distinctive branched tail. Cowboys and pioneers in the 19th century frequently shared tales of this beast that was said to inhabit desert regions, especially in states like California, Nevada, and New Mexico, with a few sightings reported as far as Colorado. According to these legends, the Cactus Cat had a weird habit of slashing open cacti at night, using its sharp bones on its front legs to expose the plant's sap. Over time, this sap would ferment, and the cat would return to drink it, becoming intoxicated in the process. In this whole drunken state, the creature was often described as stumbling through the desert, rarely posing a serious threat to humans. However, on some occasions, frontiersmen would wake up with painful welts on their bodies, allegedly caused by the creature's barbed tail. Despite these rare attacks though, the Cactus Cat was generally considered a non-aggressive cryptid, except in its treatment of cacti, which it was known to slash open with reckless abandon. Another strange feature I wanted to add attributed to the creature, which is said to be often heard echoing across the desert at night. The Cactus Cat was also believed to have some notable relatives. In a 2015 retelling of the fearsome critter stories, it was linked to the Wampus Cat and the bald-tailed cat, both of which were similarly unusual creatures. This version portrayed the Cactus Cat as larger than in earlier accounts, with spikes not only on its tail but also on its tongue. It was even described as aggressive toward humans who harvested cactus sap for syrup, claiming that the creature would go as far as killing anyone who stole from its primary food source. But yeah, despite all these details and all this stuff, it still remained a product of folklore rather than any verified accounts known today. Skeptics and scholars suggest the whole thing might just be a result of misidentification. The creature's bob-like appearance, along with the distinctive wail attributed to it, might have been inspired by real animals like mountain lions, bobcats, or even porcupines. The strange noises in the night, thought to be the Cactus Cat's cry, were likely the calls of a puma or other desert wildlife. And as with many fearsome critters, the Cactus Cat was probably invented by bored cowboys and pioneers, since as you'd guess, they would spin some tall tales around campfires on hot desert nights. North Dakota, Miniwashitu. The Miniwashitu, also known as the water monster of the Missouri River, is a cryptid that's really heavy in Native American legend, especially among the Mandan tribes of central North Dakota. This creature is described as a bipedal beast with a body covered in thick bison-like fur, but with several unusual characteristics that set it apart from other known animals. It's said to stand at around 7 to 8 feet tall and has features like a single large eye in the center of its forehead, along with a solitary horn that juts from its skull, which kinda resembles a bison. Another resemblance comes from its backbone, which is all spiked and saw-like, and sort of resembles the spine of a chupacabra in terms of its appearance. Local tribes believe that the Miniwashitu controlled the breakup of the river ice in the spring. It was said that as the temperatures rose, the creature became more active, smashing the ice along the Missouri River with its massive form. The legend then ended up being passed down by the people there and described the Miniwashitu as a really terrifying sight, one that was best avoided at all costs. If seen during the day, the sighting was believed to drive the witness mad, with death soon to follow. The creature was also often associated with some sort of redness, said to glow from within the water as it moved upstream, always against the current. One story recorded by Melvin Randolph Gilmore in 1921 tells of a man who claimed to have seen the Miniwashitu not long before his death. According to this account, the creature's body was covered entirely in red fur, making it appear as if it had emerged from the depths of the river itself. The witness, having barely made it home after the encounter, spoke of how everything turned to darkness after he saw the creature. His mind soon unraveled and he died in agony, plagued by the memory of the creature's form. This tale, like many others, contributed to the belief that the Miniwashitu held a dangerous power over those who encountered it. Though sightings of the creature have now become a little less in modern times, the legend still holds a place of reverence and fear. Natives in the area continued to pass down stories of the creature that roams the river, smashing through ice and lurking beneath the surface. The Missouri River, which was long considered a vital artery of life, is viewed now with caution during certain seasons, as some still believe that the monster could emerge. Skeptics and researchers suggest that the Miniwashitu could be the result of misidentification, like a lot of the other theories out there for other ones. They suggest that maybe it's linked to large aquatic animals being sighted or just natural river phenomena. However, the descriptions passed down through generations and the consistency of its traits keep the legend still alive in the local mythology there. South Dakota, Taku-He. The Taku-He is a cryptid from the legends of South Dakota with a history that stretches back to the Lakota people. Known as the Big Man in their language, this creature holds an important place in Lakota lore, often described as a towering figure of really great power. Its physical characteristics are a lot like what many recognize today as Bigfoot, being a tall humanoid figure covered in thick hair. Some stories describe it as a gentle guardian spirit that watches over the land, while other versions paint it sort of a darker picture, suggesting that the creature could be a dangerous predator. The modern sightings of the Taku-He began in the 1970s, when a film crew scouting Sika Hollow State Park stumbled upon enormous footprints, each measuring over 18 inches in length. This initial discovery was followed by a wave of sightings that quickly interested the local public. One of the most notable encounters during this time involved a man named Lamar Bear Ribs, who claimed to have come face to face with the creature while walking home one night. His description of the cryptid as a big hairy man with glowing red eyes interested a lot of readers who heard his story. It's said that the encounter was so terrifying that Bear Ribs needed medical attention after the incident. These sightings continued to escalate, especially in the late 1970s, when the creature became known as the McLaughlin Monster. A string of sightings in the Little Eagle and McLaughlin areas in 1977 caused even more media coverage and even led to a full-scale search by tribal police and local authorities. Despite numerous attempts to locate this creature, it's eluded capture at all times, leaving only large footprints in its wake. And something to note is South Dakota's Black Hills have also been a hotspot for Bigfoot sightings, especially around Sika Hollow State Park. It's said that this park provides an ideal habitat for such a creature if it did exist, since there's a lot of dense forested area. Sika Hollow is also covered in Lakota folklore, with its very name meaning evil or bad, suggesting that it's a place filled with dark and mysterious forces. Witnesses in the area have reported seeing massive, hair-covered humanoids lurking in the shadows, with their eyes glowing like coals. Some have even heard the creatures' cries echoing through the park at night. Keystone, South Dakota has embraced its connection to Bigfoot lore, hosting an annual Bigfoot Bash festival that celebrates all things Sasquatch. The town even has a massive wooden Bigfoot statue standing over 22 feet tall and carved from a single piece of Black Hills ponderosa pine. Nebraska. Alkali Lake Monster. The Alkali Lake Monster, which comes from northwestern Nebraska, is said to be a massive horned alligator-like beast lurking in the waters of Alkali Lake, now known as Walgren Lake. Described as about 40 feet long, with tough grayish-brown skin, the creature's most distinctive feature is the large horn situated between its eyes and nostrils, resembling something out of a prehistoric age. Alkali Lake itself, which is within the Sandhills region, spans 80 to 100 acres and has been a focal point of local legend for over a century. The first widely circulated reports of the monster date all the way back to August 1921, with the first written account appearing in the Hay Springs News in 1922. Another well-documented sighting soon followed in 1923 when a man named J.A. Johnson and two companions reported encountering the creature while camping near the lake shore. According to Johnson, they observed the creature at a distance of about 60 feet. They described it as alligator-like, but with a rhinoceros-like horn, thrashing violently before disappearing beneath the water's surface. Skeptics, though, surround the existence of the Alkali Lake Monster. Notably, some researchers have suggested that these stories may have been fabricated, pointing to local journalist John G. Maher as a key player in sensationalizing or possibly even inventing the creature. Maher was known for his penchant for tall tales and hoaxes, even going so far as to create a petrified man discovery that was later exposed as a concrete cast planted in the local Badlands. Maher's flair for storytelling, along with his employment as a corresponding reporter for various newspapers, raises the possibility that the Alkali Lake Monster was maybe just another of his fabrications. He was quoted as saying, "There was a great demand for stories and a few things to write about, so for an inventive mind, there was nothing to do but make up stories." And adding further doubt to the monster's existence, the area surrounding Alkali Lake experienced a severe drought between 1889 and 1890, reducing the lake to little more than a puddle. The sudden reappearance of a 40-foot creature just 30 years later seemed improbable to many. Sightings of the monster then died down after the 1920s, but the lake still remains a popular spot for recreation. It's just that there hasn't really been a recent report of the beast. Texas, Big Bird. In January 1976, South Texas became the center of a cryptid phenomenon involving a creature known as Big Bird. This creature, which was first spotted flying over the Rio Grande Valley, was unlike anything locals had ever seen. Named after the familiar Sesame Street character, but in jest, this version of Big Bird was far from friendly. Witnesses described the creature as standing around 5 feet tall with a featherless body, bat-like wings, and a long beak. Most disturbing though was its face, which some described as having monkey-like features. The first recorded sighting occurred on January 1st, 1976, when two cousins, Tracy Lawson and Jackie Davis, were outside playing. They looked up to see what they described as a massive, strange bird hovering above them. The next morning, their fathers went to investigate and discovered large three-toed footprints near the spot where the bird had appeared, pressed deeply into the earth. Even the family dog, normally active, retreated to its doghouse, refusing to come out. A few days later, police officer Arturo Padilla saw something in the headlights of his cruiser while driving. The dark silhouette of a large bird-like figure appeared briefly before disappearing into the night sky. Shortly after, another officer, Homer Galvin, reported seeing a similar creature gliding through the air. It wasn't long before more people began coming forward with their own encounters, including one in which Armando Grimaldo was attacked. Grimaldo claimed that the creature swooped down on him with its talons tearing into his shirt before flying away. By mid-January, the sightings had become so numerous that people began speculating about what the creature might actually be. Some believed it was possibly just a giant bat or a bird of some other kind. Others, noting its odd combination of traits, believed it might be a living fossil. Teachers in the area even compared the creature to pictures of pterosaurs found in books, finding a resemblance in the long beak and wingspan, which witnesses estimated to be over 12 feet wide. But despite the widespread sightings, no concrete evidence has ever surfaced to prove the existence of Big Bird. Theories range from, you'd probably guess, misidentification to other more that are completely opposite, with some cryptozoologists suggesting it could indeed be a living pterosaur or some other undiscovered species. The monkey-like face described by many witnesses remained one of the strangest aspects of the report, which casted doubt on the idea that it was a bird or any known animal. Iowa, Van Meter Visitor. The Van Meter Visitor was a cryptid reported in the early 20th century America, leaving behind a trail of mystery in the small town of Van Meter, Iowa. Over a period of several days in late September and early October 1903, the town's quiet routine was shattered by a series of sightings of a strange, winged creature with a blinding light on its head. On the night of September 29, 1903, the creature was first seen by Eugene Griffith, a respected member of the community. He initially thought it might just be a spotlight illuminating the rooftops, but upon approaching what he thought was the source, Griffith witnessed something that defied logic. A massive figure described as nearly 8 feet tall with bat-like wings and a horn that emitted an intense, disorienting light leapt from rooftop to rooftop before vanishing into the darkness. Griffin's encounter, though, was just the start of a series of sightings. The next night, on September 30th, the town's doctor, Dr. Alcott, had a similar encounter. Like Griffith, Dr. Alcott was awoken by the same bright light of the creature shining through his window. Armed with a gun, the doctor rushed outside, expecting that maybe it was a prankster or perhaps a burglar. Instead, he found himself face to face with a Van Meter visitor. He described the creature in similar terms to Griffith, being a winged humanoid figure with a bright, blinding light at the tip of a horn on his forehead. Despite firing his weapon 5 times, Dr. Alcott's shots had no effect. By the third night, word of the visitor had spread. Clarence Dunn, a local businessman, decided to take matters into his own hands. Armed with only a shotgun, Dunn set up a watch from inside the local bank, suspecting that clever burglars might be behind the strange sightings. However, at around 1 a.m., Dunn heard a weird strangling noise outside, rather than seeing a blinding light. When he opened the door to investigate, the Van Meter visitor appeared, with its light flooding his face at close range. Dunn then quickly fired his shotgun, shattering the bank's front window, but the creature remained unharmed. The following morning, Dunn found several sets of large, 3-toed footprints near the bank, which were similar to other accounts from the area, though no plaster casts of these prints ever surfaced. As sightings continued, the creature's presence took on a new level of strangeness. O.V. White, a local hardware store owner, also reported seeing the creature resting on a television pole. When White attempted to shoot at it, the Van Meter visitor responded not with light, but by releasing a foul odor. His neighbor Sidney Gregg also saw the animal dismount the pole and fly towards the outskirts of town, seemingly heading for an abandoned coal mine. This mine would soon become a focal point in the whole story. Over the next few days, reports of strange noises started coming in from the mine. Witnesses described the sounds as if Satan had a regiment of imps that were preparing for battle underground. Realizing that this was no ordinary cryptid encounter, a group of armed townspeople gathered and set out to confront the creature at the mine. To their shock, though, the Van Meter visitor was not alone. A second creature then emerged from the depths of the mine, and both beings took to the skies before the men could react. The townspeople then opened fire, but as before, their bullets were ineffective. Frustrated and unsure of how to deal with the whole situation, the townspeople resorted to drastic measures. They decided to seal off the whole mine, breaking up the entrance in hopes of trapping the creature inside forever. Whether the creatures flew off before the mine was closed or found another way remains unknown. But after this final encounter, the Van Meter visitor was never seen again. Arkansas Fouke Monster. The Fouke Monster, also referred to as the Boggy Creek Monster and the Swamp Stalker, is said to be a large ape-like creature sighted in the rural town of Fouke, Arkansas during the early 1970s. Similar to Bigfoot in appearance, reports of the creature described it as a bipedal, hairy figure, first officially recorded in the media, where it allegedly attacked the home of Bobby and Elizabeth Ford in May 1971. This event, along with subsequent sightings, sparked even more interest and led to the inclusion in local folklore, eventually becoming a point of cultural influence in Fouke. The creature gained additional recognition when the 1972 docudrama The Legend of Boggy Creek brought the story to national attention. Descriptions from witnesses between 1971 and 1974 varied, but most accounts described a large figure standing around 7 feet tall, weighing between 250 and 300 pounds, and fully covered in dark hair. Other reports claimed the creature was significantly larger, up to 10 feet tall, weighing as much as 800 pounds. Its movement was often linked to that of a galloping animal, swinging its arms in a way reminiscent of a monkey. Several individuals even noted its strong, unpleasant odor, described as a mix between a skunk and a wet dog, and its red eyes, which were said to be the size of silver dollars. Going even further, some tracks reportedly attributed to the Fouke monster measured as large as 17 inches long and 7 inches wide, with some prints showing only 3 toes, which was an oddity noted in several sightings. But the lore surrounding the monster goes back even earlier than the 1970s, with some suggesting that sightings of a similar creature occurred as far back as 1946 in the Jonesville area, where it was known as the Jonesville Monster. Other reports from the mid-19th century, like a sighting in 1851 recorded in the Memphis Inquirer and another in 1856 in the Caddo Gazette, speak of large hairy creatures in the region. These accounts, however, didn't gain widespread attention. It was in the 1970s, however, when the Fouke monster truly gained notoriety. The first major sighting occurred on May 2, 1971, when Elizabeth Ford claimed the creature reached through a screen window of her own home. The Fords then fired at the creature, believing that they hit it, though no blood was ever found. Despite extensive searches, the creature was never ever located. However, large footprints, scratch marks on the house's porch, and damage to the window were definitely reported. The incident attracted more and more attention when another sighting occurred on May 23, 1971, as 3 people spotted an ape-like figure crossing a nearby highway. Then, over the following months, additional sightings and footprint discoveries were made by local residents, hunters, and even tourists. One set of footprints was found in a soybean field belonging to a local business owner, but game warden Carl Galen could not confirm their authenticity. These prints, like others, also showed only 3 toes. Local law enforcement and public figures then got involved as interest in the monster kept growing. A local radio station offered a bounty of $1,090 for anyone who could capture the creature. However, the excitement also led to some safety concerns, with the Miller County Sheriff implementing a temporary no-guns policy after reports of people taking firearms into woods to search for the monster. In some cases, individuals were fined for filing false reports of the creature's appearance. By the mid-1970s, interest in the Fouke monster had waned, but sightings still occasionally resurfaced, with some few reports continuing through the 1990s. The creature was once again brought to public attention in 1991 when it was reportedly seen jumping from a bridge. In 1999, a total of 40 sightings were reported, and in 1998, it was supposedly spotted in a dry creek bed south of Fouke. Despite these claims, physical evidence still remained elusive, and skeptics argued that most reports were misinterpretations or outright hoaxes. Archaeologist Frank Schambach also gave in his own input by reviewing some of the tracks in 1971 and concluded that there was a 99% chance that they were faked. He pointed out that no primates, including apes and hominids, have 3 toes, and he questioned the nocturnal habits attributed to the creature, which conflicted with known primate behavior. Louisiana Thunderbird. The Louisiana Thunderbird is a cryptid associated with reports of large bird-like creatures in Louisiana, which are often linked to Native American traditions and even to prehistoric creatures like pterosaurs. The term Thunderbird, as you'd probably know, is widely used in cryptozoology to describe enormous winged creatures, with some reports suggesting they could resemble ancient reptiles like pterosaurs. While these sightings are often scattered all around, the lore surrounding the Thunderbird still has a lot of deep roots in Native American mythology. In Choctaw legends, 2 massive birds were said to live in the sky, with one, Aloha, laying giant eggs in the clouds, causing thunder as they rolled. Her mate, Malatha, was swift, leaving a trail of sparks as he flew through the sky, evoking comparisons to the glowing rope and lights of New Guinea. Historical connection to these bird creatures extend as far back as the early 19th century, with Thomas Jefferson's fascination with prehistoric creatures. Jefferson, known for his curiosity about the natural world, believed that some prehistoric animals, like mastodons, might still exist in remote parts of North America, especially in the Louisiana Territory. He even initiated the famous Lewis and Clark expedition to explore these uncharted regions in search of living fossils. While no such creatures were ever discovered, this belief in surviving prehistoric animals fueled future stories and sightings, laying the groundwork for the later reports of the Louisiana Thunderbird. One of the most notable modern reports came in 1978 when a giant bird was said to have attacked cattle in Marthaville, Louisiana. Terrell Wilson, who was a witness to the event, recounted that his family members had been experiencing mysterious cattle mutilations, which they believed were caused by an unusually large bird. Intrigued by the stories told by the relatives, Wilson, his brother, and cousins decided to investigate the woods near the pasture. They described encountering a massive bird with large wings and a significant head, standing about 8 feet tall. The bird was completely feathered, giving it more of a fowl-like appearance rather than resembling, a reptile. Wilson even mentioned that the sighting lasted for just about a minute, during which the cattle became spooked and stampeded, forcing the group to run back to safety. Another sighting occurred on October 10, 2013, when a woman in Slidell, Louisiana, reported a flying creature she described as prehistoric in appearance. She had been outside when she heard a loud crow-like call, but upon looking up, she saw something far from ordinary. The creature had no features, a long neck, and small teeth in its beak, which further resembled a pterosaur more than any modern bird. The sight left her terrified, and although she initially questioned whether she was hallucinating, she quickly left the area in fear that the creature might pose a danger. So yeah, there isn't too much detail in that one, but yeah, these sightings, like others, suggest that these reports are not limited to ancient times or folklore, but are still part of modern-day cryptid accounts. But to mention, these sightings still remain unconfirmed, with skeptics often attributing them to misidentified large birds or, again, just hoaxes. Wisconsin, Beast of Bray Road. The Beast of Bray Road is a cryptid primarily centered around sightings in the towns of Delavan and Elkhorn, Wisconsin during the 1990s. Described as a bipedal humanoid with canine features, the creature has drawn comparisons to both werewolves and Bigfoot, though cryptozoologists tend to shy away from the werewolf label because of the unlikelihood of shapeshifters. Instead, some argued that the Beast of Bray Road may be an undiscovered cryptid or a misidentified natural creature, with speculation linking it to the Wisconsin Bigfoot or even just an unknown canine species. The creature also goes by various other names like the Bluff Monster and Indigenous Dogman, which are sometimes used interchangeably by locals. The sightings of this creature first began as early as 1936, but gained more notoriety in the late 20th century. Witnesses described the beast as being between 5 and 7 feet tall, with fur ranging from brownish gray to dark brown. It's commonly noted for its glowing red eyes and a foul odor, and its ability to walk on 2 legs, though it can also drop to all 4s when necessary. Reports vary regarding the actual details of its claws, being that some say it has 3 with a thumb and a pinky, while others claim it's just 5, but the creature is also strongly associated with fog, which often accompanies these sightings. One early account from 1936 comes from Mark Shackelman, a night watchman at a Catholic convent near Jefferson, Wisconsin. It's said that Mark allegedly saw the beast clawing at the earth atop a Native American burial mound. When he encountered the creature again the next night, he described it as over 6 feet tall, covered in dark hair and emitting a stench like rotten meat. What stood out in his account was that the creature groaned a word that sounded like Gadara in what appeared to be a neo-human voice before it slowly retreated into the woods. More recent sightings like those of the 1990s include an incident on Bray Road involving Lori and Drizzy in 1989. Basically, while driving home late at night, Lori saw a creature on the side of the road, kneeling with its head back turned to her. As her headlights illuminated it, she saw its pointed ears and glowing eyes as it held a piece of roadkill. Though the creature made no move to attack, it watched her as she passed by, with its glowing eyes tracking her car all the way. A similar sighting took place in 1991 when Doris Gibson encountered the beast on Sittler Road, which is now Hospital Road. She initially thought she had hit a small animal when her tire lifted off the ground, but after stopping, she saw the beast charging at her. She barely made it back into her car before speeding away, later discovering claw marks on her vehicle's trunk. And there's several other encounters too I want to mention in the same period that fueled the local legend. In late 1990, Heather Bowie and her friends were sledding when they saw a large dog-like creature emerge from the nearby cornfield. Heather described the beast as having silver fur with brown patches, and it chased them halfway home before disappearing. Another incident in 1992 involved Tom Brickta and Chris Maxwell, who, while driving through fog near Fort Atkinson, believed they had hit something. When they backed up to check, they saw a hairy creature reaching toward their car. Maxwell noted the creature's horrific odor, which he compared to a skunk. Over the years, many have speculated on what the Beast of Bray Road could be. Some believe it's merely a bear suffering from mange, which could explain its unusual appearance. While black bears are not commonly found in southern Wisconsin, there have been occasional sightings, and some suggest the bear could have wandered south. However, mange is rare among black bears in Wisconsin, making this explanation less likely. Others argued that the sightings could be a combination of hoaxes, exaggerated accounts, or mistaken identities of known animals, like large dogs or wolves. Mississippi Pepie Monster. Pepie is a cryptid said to inhabit Lake Pepin, which lies along the border of Minnesota and Wisconsin and forms part of the Mississippi River. Often compared to the Loch Ness Monster, Pepie's legend stretches back to the Native American mound builders who lived along the river from the Gulf of Mexico to Minnesota. The creature has been part of local lore for generations, with occasional sightings continuing into the present day. One of the earliest modern accounts comes from the Anita Tribune in 1876, which briefly reported a sighting of a river monster near Muscatine, Iowa. Two fishermen claimed to have witnessed the creature, but the article dismissed the sighting as a case of snakes in its worst form. Despite such skepticism, Pepie's story has still persisted, with more sightings reported over the years, especially around Lake Pepin. In 2008, local businessman Larry Nielsen offered a $50,000 reward for definitive proof of Pepie's existence. This effort, aimed at promoting tourism in the Lake City area, spurred a renewed interest in the cryptid. Nielsen's reward remains unclaimed, but the offer has led to increased activity from researchers and curious locals alike. Chad Lewis, a Wisconsin native and author of Pepie, the lake monster of the Mississippi River, has spent years investigating Pepie and other cryptids in the region. His book delves into both historical and modern accounts of the creature, exploring various theories that range from Pepie being a hoax or a misidentified natural phenomenon, to it even being a submerged log, or even possibly an unknown species of aquatic animal. Lewis and his co-author Noah Voss embarked on their own expeditions in search of Pepie, using sonar, underwater cameras, and other equipment to try to capture evidence. In their investigations, they even used themselves as bait, though their findings remained inconclusive. The research presented in Lewis's book includes multiple witness accounts, some as recent as 2010, and he continues to encourage anyone with a Pepie sighting to come forward. Since the book's publication, Lewis has received even more reports, leaving him hopeful that further research could lead to new discoveries about the creature of Lake Pepin. While there's no definitive evidence right now proving its existence, it's still a pretty important part of the whole folklore there, and cryptid discussions still continue to grow. Tennessee Wildman. The Tennessee Wildman is a cryptid that has been part of the region's folklore for over 2 centuries, with the earliest sightings reported in the early 1800s. The creature, which is believed to roam the forests of McNairy County in southwestern Tennessee, is often described as something between man and beast. Eyewitnesses have consistently reported its height to be around 7 feet, with its body covered in matted hair and its fiery red eyes. One of the first notable mentions of the Wildman appeared in a March 5, 1871 article in the Hagerstown Mill, describing a terrifying creature that had been sighted repeatedly between Sabi and Cranesville. What makes the legend especially stand out is the sort of consistency in its descriptions. Over the 150 years it's been sighted, reports have remained largely the same, recounting its height, hair-covered body, and piercing red eyes. This consistency has helped keep the story alive for generations. There's several theories out there about where the Wildman legend may have originated. Some believe it stems from European tales of wildmen figures that symbolize the untamed force of nature and often appeared in medieval art and literature. Early settlers may have brought these stories with them, and when they encountered the vast, rugged wilderness of Tennessee, the legend found a fitting environment. Others suggest that the legend could have its roots in Native American folklore. The Cherokee, who inhabited much of Tennessee, had stories of mysterious beings living in the forest, which may have blended with the settlers' fear of the unknown. Another theory proposes that the Wildman could have been a circus attraction that escaped captivity, playing into the 19th century fascination with freak shows. In terms of physical description itself, the Tennessee Wildman is said to stand between 7 and 9 feet tall, covered in thick, shaggy hair that is usually dark gray or reddish brown. Its eyes, which glow red, are often described as being especially menacing. Witnesses also consistently report a powerful stench accompanying the creature, often compared to a mix of skunk spray and decaying flesh. This odor has been reported along with aggressive behaviors, especially toward women and dogs, and it's said it possesses a really terrifying scream that is unlike any known animal out there. Sightings of the Wildman have been sporadic but still persistent. One of the earliest reports dates back to 1896, involving what became known as the Wildman of Chiloe. According to this account, 4 hunters encountered a naked man with talon-like nails, tusks instead of teeth, and hair reaching down to his waist. Despite their attempts to capture the creature, it overpowered them and escaped back into the woods. Then, in the late 1990s, a paranormal investigator named Rob Phillips claimed to have had a face-to-face encounter with the Wildman while hiking at the Watauga Cliffs. Phillips described the creature as towering about 9 feet tall with dark orange fur and an unbearable stench, adding that it made a scream unlike anything he had ever heard. And in 2012, a more recent sighting came from a man named Matt Sieber in McNairy County, the same region where many of the early reports originated. Sieber recounted seeing an 8-foot-tall creature with red hair and glowing eyes, which growled at him and chased his dog. So yeah, those were the most notable ones, and with a lot, there's still pretty much unknown stuff about it, but all these sightings just helped its reputation in total. Alabama, Falkville Metal Man. The Metal Man of Falkville, Alabama is one of the most unusual and debated cryptid encounter stories on record. The incident took place on October 17, 1973, when Police Chief Jeff Greenhaw responded to a report of a UFO landing in a field. What began as a routine call quickly spiraled into one of the strangest moments of Greenhaw's life. Arriving at the scene, Greenhaw didn't find the spaceship he had been expecting, but instead saw something even more wild. A humanoid figure stood nearby, covered in what appeared to be a suit made of shiny, metallic material resembling thick aluminum foil. The figure's movements were described as jerky and childlike, yet robotic with an unnatural stiff gait. Its appearance was almost seamless, with no visible separation between its head and body, except for a small antenna sticking out from the top of its head. Greenhaw, realizing the strangeness of what he was seeing, grabbed his Polaroid camera from his truck and managed to snap 4 pictures of the entity. As soon as the camera flashed, the figure took off, running at a speed Greenhaw described as faster than any human he had ever seen. It was capable of covering nearly 3 meters with each bound. Even at 35 miles per hour in his truck, Greenhaw couldn't catch up to it. He ultimately lost control of his vehicle, veering into a ditch, and the entity disappeared into the night. Despite his attempts to document the encounter, the aftermath of Greenhaw's sighting was devastating. Although his story briefly gained media attention, he quickly became the target of ridicule. Within months, Greenhaw was dismissed from his position as police chief, his marriage collapsed, and his house mysteriously burned down. These events, along with the unexplained nature of the setting, fueled some conspiracy theories, with many speculating that he had come too close to something the authorities wanted to keep hidden. Although Greenhaw's photographs were analyzed, no clear determination could be made as to whether the encounter was real or a fabrication. Skeptics have long debated whether the Metal Man encounter was a hoax or a genuine alien sighting. Some critics have suggested that the figure could have been a person in a costume, while others believe the incident may have been inspired by other UFO sightings occurring around the same time, such as the famous Pascagoula alien abduction case. However, Greenhaw's supporters argued that the personal toll the event took on his life gives credibility to his account, questioning why someone would stage such a hoax only to suffer severe personal and professional consequences. Ohio, Octoman. The Octoman of the Ohio River comes from the waters of that region. For how it looks, it's described as a gray-skinned quasi-cephalopod creature. The Octoman first came into public attention in January 1959 when a series of strange encounters occurred around the Ohio River and its tributaries. The first known sighting came from a witness near New Richmond, Ohio, who reported seeing something emerge from the river that was so strange it was indescribable, as he quoted. This was just the beginning of what would become a short but intense flurry of reports about this mysterious creature. The story gained even more traction when a truck driver traveling near a bridge on the Little Miami River called in a similar sighting. He claimed to have seen a creature unlike anything he had ever encountered before, and his report was taken seriously enough to make local headlines. Police dispatchers, while skeptical, noted that the witnesses seemed genuinely terrified by what they had seen, and their voices were distinct, suggesting multiple independent reports. One of the strangest aspects of these series of sightings occurred when, shortly after these reports began, all of the streetlights along Kellogg Avenue, stretching from Lunken Airport to Coney Island, suddenly went out. Even though authorities initially blamed the outage on high winds, it was later revealed that the lights were on two separate circuits, making the cause of the blackout even more mysterious. This only fueled the speculation that something truly unusual was happening in the area. Over the next few days, additional reports surfaced. One came from a local scientist who claimed to have seen something leap onto a bridge over the Licking River, which flows into Kentucky. Describing the creature as large and grotesque, the scientist's account added further credibility to the growing legend. And another witness, a young woman, compared the creature to an octopus after seeing it near the Fort Thomas pumping station, though her description was vague and left much to the imagination. The most detailed sighting, though, came from somewhere else, and this was from a woman in Covington, Kentucky, who reported seeing the creature bent over and described its body as covered in fat rolls and slimy texture, with a misshapen skull. Her encounter was particularly disturbing, though her story would not surface until nearly 20 years later. Despite the alarming nature of all these sightings, reports of the Octoman quickly went down, and by February 1959, the creature seemed to have disappeared. However, the legend did not die out completely. In 1978, cryptozoologist Dennis Pilches published additional details in his booklet Bigfoot Tales of Unexplained Creatures, connecting the Octoman to other strange sightings in the Ohio River region. There are many theories about what the Octoman might have been. Some suggest it was an undiscovered amphibious creature able to hibernate for long periods in the river's depths. Others speculate that it could have been an extraterrestrial being stranded after its craft crashed into the water, though no UFO sightings were reported at the time. Some investigators have even tried to lump the Octoman in with Bigfoot reports from the same area, though the descriptions of the creature as hairless, octopus-like, and grotesque make this comparison kinda unlikely. Comparisons have also been made to other regional cryptids like the Loveland frogmen, which were first reported in 1955 near the Little Miami River. The frogmen were described as 3 to 4 feet tall with leathery skin and webbed hands and feet, bearing some resemblance to the Octoman, though the frogmen were much smaller. And there's also the case of the green-clawed beast, which allegedly dragged a woman underwater in the Ohio River in 1955, adding to the strange and often dangerous lore surrounding these waters. North Carolina, the Beast of Bladenboro. The Beast of Bladenboro was an infamous cryptid that allegedly terrorized the town of Bladenboro, North Carolina, during the winter of 1953 to 1954. The first report surfaced on December 29, 1953, when a creature described as sleek and black, measuring about 5 feet long, killed a dog in Clarkton, 8 miles from Bladenboro. Over the following days thereafter, residents in and around Bladenboro discovered a string of grisly animal deaths, many of which exhibited signs of extreme violence. The victims, who are primarily dogs, were often found crushed or decapitated, leading to growing fear and speculation about the identity of the killer. Then, on December 31st, 1953, just 2 days later, two dogs belonging to a Bladensboro resident were found mutilated. The owner of the dogs recounted that his dogs had fought hard, but despite the blood and saliva evidence left behind, the creature returned later that night to take away one of the dead dogs. The grisly attacks continued into the new year. By January 1st, 1954, two more dogs were found dead, and on January 2nd, a farmer reported the death of his own dog. To get into the appearance of this creature though, local witnesses provided some varying descriptions. One described it as a 4.5 foot long animal that resembled either a bear or a panther. Another account detailed a smaller, similar looking creature accompanying the larger one. Some witnesses even reported hearing strange, creepy sounds, like a baby crying. One resident who didn't see the animal but heard it estimated it to be around 150 pounds based on how it moved through the bushes. Physical evidence collected from tracks indicated that the beast might have had sharp claws about an inch long and could have weighed easily between 80 and 90 pounds. On January 5th, another thing happened when the beast was seen attacking a dog near a creek, where two sets of tracks, one larger and one smaller, were discovered, leading to theories that the creature might have had a mate or offspring. That same day, another local resident encountered what she described as a large mountain lion near her home, though it fled when she screamed. Efforts to capture or kill the beast were really extensive. On the night of January 3rd, 1954, Bladensboro's police chief Roy Force led a search, though his dogs refused to follow the trail. Hunters from Wilmington then joined the search that evening, tracking the creature for 3 miles through the swamplands. By January 5th, over 500 people had gathered for a hunt, swelling to more than 800 the following day, all searching the swamps for signs of the beast. Despite these efforts, no conclusive results had emerged. On January 7th, even more hunters turned out, but authorities began to worry about safety, leading to the decision to call off the hunt unless the beast made another confirmed kill. The turning point then came on January 13 when a local farmer named Luther Davis captured a bobcat in a steel trap. Davis shot the bobcat, and Mayor Woodrow Fussell declared the end of the Beast of Bladensboro saga, stating that the creature had been killed. However, questions still persisted about whether such a small bobcat could have been responsible for the series of violent attacks. On the same day, another man from Tabor City reported hitting a large spotted cat with his car, while yet another hunter claimed to have shot a similar animal elsewhere. The conflicting reports added further confusion to the whole mystery, as it became clear which, if any, of the killed animals was truly the Beast of Bladensboro. Speculation surrounding the beast's identity continued long after the events of 1953 to 1954. While many witnesses described the creature as feline, no consensus was ever reached on the exact species. Some suggested it could be a panther, though experts like Harry Davis from the Raleigh State Museum pointed out that the panthers were not native to the region. Others believed the creature to be wolf or a large dog, with some pointing to a particular dog named Big Boy, which was a German Shepherd and Hound mix known to be aggressive, as a potential culprit. The idea that Big Boy or another large dog might have been responsible for the attacks gained some traction, though it still remains speculative. But yeah, in the decades since the cryptid's supposed demise, the story has sort of taken on a life of its own. The town of Bladensboro embraced the legend, hosting an annual Beast Fest to celebrate the town's connection to the creature. South Carolina, Lizard Man of Scape Ore Swamp. The Lizard Man of Scape Ore Swamp, a cryptid said to roam the swamps of Bishopville, South Carolina, first gained attention in the late 1980s. The creature is often described as a reptilian humanoid standing around 7 feet tall, with green scaly skin, glowing red or orange eyes, and 3-fingered webbed hands. When sightings of the lizard man first came out, it caused a lot of media interest, with newspapers, television, and radio broadcasts covering the mysterious being and the damage reportedly caused by it. While various theories have been proposed, including ideas that it could be a remnant of a prehistoric reptilian species, no definitive evidence has been found to confirm its existence. The earliest sighting actually linked to the creature was made in the fall of 1987 by George Holloman Jr., but it wasn't until the encounter of a 17-year-old Christopher Davis in the summer of 1988 that the story gained widespread attention. Davis was driving home at around 2 a.m. on June 29th when he had a flat tire near Scape Ore Swamp. While changing this tire, he heard a thumping sound behind him and turned to see a strange figure charging toward him. According to Davis, the creature attempted to grab his car and even managed to climb onto the roof as he drove away, swerving to shake it off. Upon arriving home, Davis discovered that his car had sustained damage, including scratches and a broken side view mirror. He described the creature as having long black nails, rough green skin, and glowing eyes. Despite the damage to the vehicle, there was really no physical evidence left behind to prove the creature's existence. In the weeks following Davis's encounter, reports of similar sightings surfaced from nearby areas. Residents living near the swamp reported unusual scratches and bite marks on their cars, suggesting the creature had attacked them as well. Most of these reports came from within a 3-mile radius of Bishopville swamps. Law enforcement, while skeptical, acknowledged the number of sightings made by seemingly reliable individuals. The sheriff's department even took plaster casts of large 3-toed footprints found near the swamp, measuring about 14 inches in length. However, these prints were never sent for further analysis after biologists stated that they were unclassifiable and didn't match any known animal species. But yeah, theories about the lizard man's identity vary widely. Some speculate that it might be a living dinosaur or some form of reptilian evolution that had managed to survive undetected in remote swamps. Others propose it could be a mutated creature, though no biological explanation has been confirmed. The whole legend continued through the summer of 1988, but reports began to decline by the end of that season. One notable incident occurred on August 5th when Kenneth Orr, an airman from Shaw Air Force Base, claimed to have shot the creature on Highway 15, providing skills and a small amount of blood as proof. However, the thing is, Orr later admitted to fabricating the story and was charged with filing a false police report. He confessed that he had made up the sighting in an effort to keep the lizard man stories alive in the media. But yeah, despite Orr's hoax, descriptions of the lizard man still remain consistent. While some investigators believed the creature to be a misidentified bear, others were convinced that something much stranger was haunting the swamps. Pennsylvania, Raystown Ray. Raystown Ray, which is a cryptid said to inhabit Raystown Lake in Huntingdon County, Pennsylvania, has interested the locals and visitors for decades now. This lake monster, which is often described as large and shadowy, has been spotted beneath the surface by boaters and swimmers who have also reported disturbances in the water, as if something massive was moving just below. The sightings have continued for years, with the earliest official recorded encounter dating back to 1962, before the original Raystown Dam was destroyed to create the current 8,300-acre man-made lake in 1971. The depth of the lake, which reaches up to 185 feet, adds to the mystery, since it provides a lot of space for an elusive creature to hide. One of the first notable photographs of Ray was taken by fishermen in 2006, capturing what appeared to be a large figure just below the water surface. Since then, reports of a creature as long as 50 to 60 feet have persisted, especially during the spring months. Locals like Dwight Beall, managing director of Raystown Lake, have commented on the whole phenomenon, suggesting that Raystown Ray emerges during April. While the creature's diet remains uncertain, Jeff Krause, a wildlife biologist at the lake, speculated in 2006 that Ray might be a herbivore, similar to manatees, as there has been no evidence of it preying on fish or waterfowl like ducks and geese. And the legend gained further credibility when Sci-Fi Channel's Fact or Faked Paranormal Files sent a team to investigate in 2010. Using sonar, conducting night dives, and analyzing photographs, they concluded that the sightings seemed plausible, though no proof of Ray's existence really emerged. The possibility of a large unknown creature lurking in the lake still remained open, with many eyewitnesses providing consistent descriptions. One account comes from a camper who encountered Ray during a solo trip to Raystown Lake in 2005 or 2006. Early one morning, while swimming near a secluded campground, the individual noticed something swimming ahead. Initially thinking it might be a deer or a bear because of the size of the wake, the camper quickly realized that this was not no ordinary creature. The creature dived beneath the water and resurfaced before noticing the swimmer and turning in their direction. The campers stayed still, treading water as the creature approached, before panicking and swimming for shore. Though unable to completely climb out of the water because of the steep bank, the swimmer grabbed a large rock and stood ready, watching as the creature swam back toward its original location. After waiting for some time, the camper ended up returning to their camp and choosing not to swim again until the following year. Theories about Raystown Ray's identity range from surviving plesiosaurs similar to, Loch Ness or an oversized carp. Some speculate that the descriptions of a large, humped body and a long neck could be remnants of prehistoric life in the region, but modern research has cast doubt on plesiosaur-related theories. To get into it a little bit, plesiosaurs are now believed to have been physically incapable of such movements of, rising gracefully out of the water with their necks. The more likely explanation, according to skeptics, is that the sightings are of large carp, which are, common in Raystown Lake and can grow to impressive sizes, sometimes exceeding even 100 pounds. In fact, the lake's vendors sell food pellets to visitors so that they can feed the massive carp that regularly gather near the docks. Despite this explanation though, many still believe that something far larger and more mysterious resides in the lake. Sightings of Ray have been reported sporadically over the years, though no substantial evidence has been found to accurately confirm or deny the existence of a creature. So yeah, for now, the legend still thrives in local culture, with songs even written about the cryptid, and the lake still attracting a lot of tourists and hunters alike. New York, Beast of Sherman. The Beast of Sherman is a cryptid reported in the mid-1960s by a young boy and his family in Sherman, New York. The boy, whose identity remains anonymous, sent a letter in 1970 to John Keel, who is the author of the Mothman Prophecies and a prominent paranormal investigator. The letter described repeated encounters with colossal albino creatures that resembled giant prehistoric monsters. Basically, according to the boy, the creatures would frequently appear near his family's swampside property between 1965 and the early 1970s. The creatures, which he and his family observed on multiple occasions, were described as massive, white sloth-like beasts standing anywhere from 12 to 18 feet tall, with long tails measuring between 6 and 8 feet. Covered entirely in hair, these creatures would walk on either 2 or 4 legs, making their presence even more imposing. In his letter, the boy provided really specific details of the sightings. He mentioned that the beasts had also approached his family's yard on at least one occasion. The creatures, always described as white, were sometimes seen alone and other times in pairs. The boy stated that both his family and at least 2 other men had witnessed the creatures, further adding to the credibility of their sighting. He insisted that despite his young age, the sightings were real and the beasts were no figment of his imagination. His comparison of the creature to prehistoric sloths suggests that the beast of Sherman might have been similar to a megatherium, which was a massive ground sloth that once roamed South America during the Pleistocene epoch. This resemblance to the South American cryptid known as the Mapinguari has drawn the attention of cryptozoologists, who have speculated that the two creatures may be related. The story, while brief and lacking substantial evidence, remains one of the more interesting cryptid reports from the United States. It's especially noteworthy because the sightings took place not really in a remote or uncharted region, but in western New York, which is far from jungles or tundras where one might expect such creatures to hide. The idea of massive sloth-like beasts roaming the swamps of New York challenges common assumptions about the kinds of creatures that might exist in these areas, especially since it's so close to human habitation. While this letter remains the only known report of the beast of Sherman, the details of the sightings, along with the family's repeated encounters over several years, lend the story some credibility. And also, the fact that John Keel, a respected figure in paranormal research, chose to include the letter in his book, The Complete Guide to Mysterious Beings, suggests that he found it compelling enough to stand alongside other well-known cryptid accounts. Delaware. Selbyville Swamp Monster. The Selbyville Swamp Monster, a cryptid said to lurk in the depths of the Great Cypress Swamp in Selbyville, Delaware, became part of local legend in the early 1960s. Described as an ape-like creature, the swamp-dwelling hominid supposedly haunted the foggy terrain, terrifying residents and sparking a frenzy of monster sightings. However, the origins of the legend were later revealed to be part of a hoax concocted by Ralph Grapperhaus, the editor of the Delmarva News, and his friend Fred Stevens. In April 1964, Stevens, dressed in a homemade costume fashioned from his aunt's old raccoon hat and a frightening mask, began playing the role of the Selbyville Swamp Monster. He would jump out at passing cars along Route 54, scaring drivers and further fueling the legend. The hoax was so successful that a photo of the creature made the front page of the Delmarva News on April 23, 1964, quickly gaining attention from other news outlets. The hoax then continued for months, with Stevens even participating in hunts to find the creature. However, as the legend grew and the community became more involved in trying to track down the swamp monster, Stevens began to fear for his safety and eventually stopped his prank. It wasn't until 1987, 23 years later, that Stevens finally admitted his role in the creation of the Selbyville Swamp Monster. Despite this revelation though, the story of the swamp monster didn't just disappear there. In fact, strange sightings continued to be reported even after Stevens ceased his charade. Some residents claim to have seen a creature in the swamp long after 1964, leading many to believe that something else might be inhabiting the Great Cypress Swamp. Even stranger, the swamp had a history of weird occurrences long before Stevens and Grapperhaus's prank. In the 1920s, hunters in the area reported hearing terrifying inhuman screams followed by the sound of something large crashing through the woods toward them. This earlier account, along with other unexplainable sightings, has kept the legend of the Selbyville Swamp Monster still alive in the minds of many locals. The mystery surrounding the swamp monster deepens with the contributions of Salisbury author Andy Nunes, who references the swamp monster in his book Mysteries of the Eastern Shore. Nunes, along with several other Eastern Shore natives, remains open to the possibility that something beyond the hoax might be roaming the foggy, shadowy swamps of Selbyville. While many have dismissed the legend as nothing more than an amusing trick that spiraled out of control, the continued reports of strange happenings suggest that the Great Cypress Swamp might still hide some secrets that are unknown. Maryland, Dwyo. The Dwyo, a cryptid said to roam the woods of Maryland, is described as a towering wolf-like creature standing about 6 feet tall, covered in dark fur with a long bushy tail and a dog-like snout. While it bears a close resemblance to a wolf, it possesses a humanoid stance, using its 4 legs like arms, and has become one of the more mysterious creatures of the region. According to local legend, the Dwayyo is located in an ongoing feud with another local cryptid, the Snallygaster, which is a flying, blood-sucking reptile. Their rivalry is said to date back to the early settlement of the Middletown Valley in Maryland's Blue Ridge Mountains. The first known reference to the Dwayyo name itself came from a sighting in 1944 in West Middleton, Frederick County. In this instance, the witnesses described hearing terrifying screams and found large, unidentifiable footprints in the area. However, the cryptid did not become widely known until a much publicized report appeared in the Frederick News Post on November 27, 1965. The article detailed an encounter near Granboro State Park by a man using the alias John Becker. Becker reported hearing strange noises outside his home at dusk. As he went to investigate, a creature emerged from the woods, as large as a bear with long black hair and a bushy tail, and growling like an enraged wolf. The creature then rose up on its hind legs and attacked him. The Dwayyo eventually retreated back into the woods, leaving Becker and his family left there terrified. He even filed a report with the local police, recounting the attack and officially naming the creature the Dwayyo. Following Becker's account, the legends started to grow rapidly. Sightings were reported in nearby areas, and local newspapers received numerous calls and letters from individuals claiming to have encountered the creature. However, by mid-December of 1965, the reports had largely faded from public attention. The next significant sighting came during the summer of 1966, again near Granboro State Park. A man, known only as Jim A., encountered the Dwayyo while heading toward a campsite. Jim described the creature as being around the size of a deer but walking on two legs. Its body was covered in dark brown fur and its triangular head featured pointed ears and chin. As the creature approached, it let out a horrid scream before retreating. Jim noted the strange spider-like way the creature's legs extended outward as it moved, which further unnerved him during the whole encounter. And in the fall of 1976, two men driving near Thurmont, Maryland, saw a large creature run across the road in front of their car. The men described it as standing around 6 feet tall, moving with a forward incline as it ran. Its fur was a mix of brown and brindle, with dark and light stripes on its lower body. The creature's forelegs were thinner and outstretched as it ran, while its back legs were thick and muscular, much like those of a kangaroo. The men emphasized that the creature's head resembled a wolf more than any kind of ape, and its movements were adapted for upright mobility, giving it sort of a powerful appearance. 2 years later, in 1978, park rangers near Cunningham Falls in Maryland reported seeing a large, hairy creature running on two legs, adding yet another encounter to the lore of the Dwayyo. Despite the occasional sightings and continued interest in the creature though, no proper evidence has been found to explain what the Dwayyo might be, leaving its true nature still a mystery. The Dwayyo's origins might stretch back even further into history though. Folklore dating back to the late 18th century tells of a creature known as the Hexen Wolf, which was a bipedal wolf-like monster that terrorized settlers in the areas of Carroll, Frederick, and Washington counties. The Pennsylvania Dutch settlers brought with them tales of the Hexen Wolf from their homeland in eastern Pennsylvania, describing it as having the same mammalian, wolf-like appearance as the Dwayyo, though it was steeped more in supernatural folklore. Whether the two creatures are connected or not though still remains a subject of debate among those who have studied the legends. Connecticut, Glowacus. In 1939, a mysterious creature known as the Glowacus began attacking livestock and pets in Glastonbury, Connecticut. Initially described as a large cat, the creature's elusive nature led to more varied descriptions, with some witnesses claiming it resembled a mix between a dog, bear, and cat. Hunters, farmers, and other residents reported strange tracks, creepy sounds, and fleeting glimpses of the animal, fueling its reputation as a dangerous and unknown predator. Then, on January 14, 1939, a full hunting party set out to track down the Glowacus. Despite a detailed search of the surrounding countryside, the creature still remained uncaptured. Over the following weeks, more sightings and discoveries of tracks kept the legend alive, with paw prints spanning 2 miles east of Glastonbury. As the Glowacus hunts continued, the story spread throughout north-central Connecticut, drawing attention from residents and hunters eager to solve the mystery. Then, by the mid-1950s, sightings of the Glowacus resurfaced, with reports stretching from Glastonbury to Granby. Again, the creature eluded capture, but the fear and intrigue surrounding it persisted. Many speculated about what the Glowacus could be, with theories ranging from a rogue eastern puma to an escaped exotic animal. Others believed it might have been a fisher, an animal known for its aggressive nature and blood-curdling screams. At the time, fishers were rare in Connecticut, which may have contributed to the confusion when identifying the creature. And despite the last confirmed sightings occurring decades ago, tales of the Glowacus still circulate in the region, and some believe the creature might still roam the woods. Massachusetts, Gloucester Sea Serpent. The Gloucester Sea Serpent, first reported in 1817, is a creature said to inhabit the waters of Gloucester, Massachusetts, and the Cape Ann area. Described as a massive serpent-like animal with humps along its back, it became the subject of numerous sightings by fishermen and sailors throughout the 19th century. The earliest recorded sighting off Cape Ann dates back to 1638, when John Josselin reported seeing a similar creature. However, it was in August 1817 that the sightings gained even more widespread attention, leading to an extended period of reports that lasted into 1818 and 1819. The creature was typically described as being about 60 feet long, with a turtle-like head and a body that rose out of the water in humps. One of the most notable encounters occurred in August 1817, when a group of men aboard the schooner Caravan claimed to see the sea serpent swimming alongside their vessel. They fired a cannon at the creature, but it quickly dove beneath the surface and disappeared. This sighting, along with countless others, cemented the sea serpent's reputation as a local legend. Then, over the years, descriptions of the Gloucester sea serpent varied. Some witnesses described it as a long snake-like animal, while others compared its head to that of a horse or even a dinosaur. The sheer number of people who have claimed to seeing the creature, combined with the report from the Linnean Society, makes the Gloucester sea serpent one of the most well-documented sea monsters in cryptid history. And despite this, skepticism still persists, with some suggesting that the creature might have been a large eel or even just a hoax. Others propose it was a misidentification of known marine animals, though no proper explanation has ever been provided. The last widely discussed sighting occurred around 1980, when a group of fishermen off the coast of Gloucester claimed to have a close encounter with a creature exactly matching the sea serpent's description. Though the fishermen initially swore to keep the event a secret, the story eventually leaked. When asked about it later, they remained certain about what they saw, describing the serpent's eyes as pure evil when it turned its head toward them. They never spoke of the creature again. The Gloucester sea serpent has since attracted the attention of the whole cryptozoology community. Bernard Heuvelmans, often regarded as the founder of the field, included the Gloucester sighting in his works in the wake of the sea serpents. Some reports of the creature even mentioned a stinger or spear protruding from its head, leading some researchers like Joe Nickel to suggest that the sightings might have been a narwhal. New Hampshire, Doc Benton. Doc Benton is a figure tied to both legend and cryptid stories, and is said to haunt the area around Mount Moosilauke in New Hampshire. Typically described as a tall man cloaked in black with long white hair, he's known for his unnatural speed and alleged involvement in strange mutilations and disappearances in the region. Stories about him have been passed down since the early 19th century, portraying him as a dark and dangerous presence. According to the most common version of the tale, Doc Benton was once Thomas Hart Benton, a bright young boy from Benton, New Hampshire, originally called Coventry. He was sent to Germany to study medicine, where he became fascinated with alchemy and the pursuit of eternal life under the guidance of a professor named Stockmeyer. Upon his return, Benton established himself as a respected doctor, living in a cabin deep in the woods. However, after a personal tragedy, being whether the loss of a family or the rejection of a lover, he withdrew from society and began conducting secret experiments. Rumors then spread that he was attempting to unlock the secrets of immortality using methods he had learned about. Not long after, strange events began to unfold in the nearby farms. Dead animals, including cows, horses, and sheep, were found with a peculiar wound behind their left ears, which were red and swollen with a tiny white pinprick in the center. These mysterious deaths soon extended to humans, with similar wounds found on corpses. When locals went to confront Benton at the cabin, they discovered that he had vanished, but sightings of him still continued. He was seen lurking in the forest around Moosilauke, always moving quickly, dressed in black, with his long white hair standing out in the darkness. People whispered about his inhuman speed and strength, convinced that his alchemical experiments had turned him into something more than human. One of the earliest reported encounters happened in November 1825, when a woman heard her daughter scream and saw a figure in a black cloak carrying her off into the woods. A search party then followed the tracks to a ravine where the footprints abruptly stopped. They looked up and saw Benton at the top of a cliff. He hurled the girl's body down to her death, laughing as he disappeared from view. Other incidents then followed. In 1860, 2 loggers vanished, with one later found dead, showing the same distinctive wound. Then, in 1901, a brakeman named Mr. Tomaso was discovered beside a logging railroad track, marked by the same injury. As recently as 1970, a hiker in Joby Dunk Ravine was shoved from a ledge by an unseen hand, leaving him battered and in shock. While some have tried to dismiss the legend, pointing out that the town of Benton was named after a Missouri senator named Thomas Hart Benton, with no real connection to a doctor of that name, others suggest that the true identity of the figure has been forgotten or obscured over time. Some believe that Benton never actually existed, and that a different force may be responsible for the strange deaths and sightings. But despite the skepticism, the story of Doc Benton is still told today, particularly at the Dartmouth Lodge, where it's become a traditional tale to scare incoming students. Maine, Up Island Spider. The Up Island spider, also called the Hearst House spider, is believed to be an unusually large species of wolf spider native to the northern part of Islesboro, Maine. Typically described as dark brown with red eyes, its appearance is said to resemble common wolf spiders except for its sheer size. Some accounts claim the spider can reach a span of at least 8 inches with its legs fully extended. It's even rumored to be heavy enough that its footsteps can be heard in a quiet room. While it shares characteristics with the wolf spider, such as pouncing on prey and carrying its young on its back, the Up Island spider has never been known to construct webs for trapping food. Instead, it uses strands of silk to assist with mobility. The spider's limited range is concentrated in an area above the narrow isthmus that separates the northern and southern halves of Islesboro. According to locals, the heart of its population lies near a local church, fueling speculation that the spiders may have been brought to the island in a coffin, which is how the term Hearst House spider originated. Long ago, these spiders were often found in the carriage houses where hearses were kept. Though sightings have been reported in the southern parts of the island, those spiders tend to be smaller and less frequently seen compared to the larger ones from the northern region. Hawaii, Menehune. The Menehune, considered by some to be a distinct race of people, were recorded in an 1820 census where 65 individuals identified themselves as living in Wainiaha, Kauai. Unlike the dwarves found in European folklore, these were not mystical beings but rather independent, darker-skinned people known for their incredible construction abilities. Their origins trace back to the Kahiki, where they were called Manahune, a name associated with the lower class said to lack mana or spiritual power. Over time, as they arrived in Hawaii, the pronunciation shifted to Menehune, and their reputation as skilled builders grew. One of the most notable feats attributed to the Menehune is the construction of the Alakoko fish pond at Niumalu. According to local storyteller Fred Widman, the fish pond was being built in secrecy under strict kapu or taboo laws, which forbade anyone from witnessing the Menehune's work. However, when two Ali observed the construction, the work stopped immediately. The Menehune, having been discovered, left the project incomplete. They washed their bloody hands in the fish pond, wounds caused by carrying rough, unhewn stones for miles from Wahiawa to Niumalu in the dead of night. These stones, chiseled to fit perfectly, still stand as a testament to the precision and craftsmanship of the Menehune. And it's said that the Menehune people were led by a chief named Ola, whose remarkable constructions are still remembered today. In other stories like that of Hawaiola, an ocean-faring chief, Menehune descendants were described as short, stout people who had already settled on the islands. These Menehune were said to be descendants of Loa Nu'u, a connection that ties them to the same ancestral line as Hawaii-Iloa. Rhode Island, the headless skeleton of Swamptown. The tale of the headless skeleton of Swamptown is rooted in the history of Indian Corner Road in Rhode Island. In the early 1800s, the area surrounding Swamptown was mostly untamed forests and wetlands, with the roads unnamed and largely deserted at night. Some paths were given ominous titles by locals, and while many names have since changed, Indian Corner still remains, a reminder of the events said to occur there. Indian Corner Road was marked by a large boulder, a known landmark for travelers in the winter. However, the rock also became associated with a strange and frightening apparition, which was a headless torso that reportedly appeared on foggy nights, shrouded in a creepy blue light. Witnesses described how it would rise from the ground, moving erratically before shooting up into the sky, leaving a trail of light behind. Some believe this figure to be the vengeful spirit of a Narragansett Indian, angered by the displacement of his people during the time of the King Philip's War, while others thought it might be the restless ghost of a young boy. Local historians mention a battle between settlers and the Narragansett in Swamptown, with many believing that the remains of those killed in the conflict were buried beneath the infamous boulder. On particularly dark nights, it was said that blood could be seen seeping from beneath the rock, a sight often attributed to the high iron content in the soil, though it did little to calm the nerves of those passing by. One story that has circulated for generations involves a road worker who stumbled upon a skull hidden beneath a pile of leaves on Indian Corner Road. Curious, he brought the skull home only to be met with his wife's disapproval. Reluctantly, he placed it on a pole outside their home. That night, a violent storm shook the valley, followed by loud clattering outside. As the noise grew closer, the man and his wife peered out to see a headless skeleton frantically searching around their yard. The next morning, the skull was gone, as if the skeleton had come to reclaim what was his. To this day, the headless skeleton is said to guard Indian Corner, sitting atop the boulder as a sentinel over the graves of his people, or perhaps seeking to reclaim the land his ancestors once called home. Those familiar with the legend avoid the road after dark, fearing they might encounter the restless spirit that still haunts the area. Indiana, oil pit squid. The oil pit squid is a creature reported to have been discovered in 1996 at the GMC Delphi plant in Anderson, Indiana. Workers cleaning out a toxic sludge pit stumbled upon grayish-red squid-like beings measuring around 6 to 8 inches in length, swimming in a mix of oil, antifreeze, and other industrial chemicals. Their strange appearance and the inhospitable environment in which they were found immediately sparked interest, leading some to speculate about alien origins, mutated organisms, or unknown species. One of the squids was even captured and placed in a jar, but before any scientific analysis could be conducted, the specimen mysteriously vanished, either thrown away or stolen. No other creatures were found during subsequent cleanings of the sludge pit, and the oil pit squid faded into local legend. Over the years, various explanations have been proposed, ranging from mutated earthworms to bacteria growth, or even an unknown species that somehow thrived in the toxic environment. While many believe it was a hoax, some still consider the incident unexplained, fueling theories of alien spores or undiscovered life forms. Nevada, Tahoe-Tessie. Tahoe-Tessie is a cryptid said to reside in Lake Tahoe, the largest alpine lake in North America, straddling the border between California and Nevada. The tales of this lake-dwelling creature trace back to the stories of the Washoe and Paiute tribes in the mid-19th century. According to these accounts, the creature inhabits an underwater tunnel beneath Cave Rock, a landmark near the lake. Over the years, sightings have continued, adding to the folklore surrounding Tahoe-Tessie. Reports of the creature vary greatly in description though. Some accounts claim Tessie is as small as a bean, while others describe it as being the size of a bus. Most often, it's depicted as having a serpentine body as wide as a barrel, with smooth skin despite its reptilian appearance. The color of the creature is said to range from jet black to turquoise depending on the sighting. One of the earliest modern sightings occurred in the 1950s when two off-duty police officers reportedly witnessed a large black hump rise from the lake's surface, keeping pace with their boat, which was traveling at over 60 miles per hour. Other accounts then followed. In 1979, a group of 4 people claimed to have seen a serpent-like creature hunting trout near Homewood, California during the winter. They described the creature as being as thick as a telephone pole with a length of 30 to 60 feet. Unlike typical sea serpents, this creature didn't swim side to side, but rather dove into the water with its head, as though it was feeding. According to the witnesses, they were left speechless after the encounter. Then, in the 1980s, 2 fishermen reported seeing a 15-foot long serpent near Cave Rock, swimming just below the water's surface. Several weeks later, 2 divers claimed they discovered an underwater cave and were startled when a creature shot out from the silt, leaving behind 2 large fin prints where it had been. Another strange report came from a kayaking instructor in the late 1990s, who saw what he initially thought was a 2-person kayak capsizing in the water. However, upon closer inspection, there was no kayak to be found, and none of his students had reported flipping over. One of the more notable sightings occurred in 2004 when an off-duty bartender aboard the Tahoe Queen snapped a photo of what he described as a black hump rising from the water, which he believed to be the top of Tessie's head. Then, in 2006, a family vacationing near the lake reported seeing a large black sturgeon-like creature with no scales and an upturned white nose. They were struck by how the creature moved in an up and down motion, much like a mammal, rather than the side-to-side movement typical of reptiles. But despite these sightings, the true identity of Tahoe Tessie still remains a mystery. Some believe that the creature could be a prehistoric reptile like a plesiosaur, ichthyosaur, or a mosasaur, as fossils of these ancient marine creatures have been found in the surrounding Nevada desert and Sierra Nevada mountains. However, skeptics argue that Lake Tahoe was formed during the last ice age, long after these creatures went extinct, making such a theory improbable. Other explanations suggest that Tessie could be a large sturgeon or even a new species of freshwater eel, both of which could explain some of the sightings without invoking prehistoric animals. Michigan Dogman. The Michigan Dogman is a cryptid described as a 7-foot-tall bipedal creature with the body of a man and the head of a dog. Its howl, which sounds like a human scream, has haunted Michigan's folklore since the late 19th century. The first recorded sighting occurred in 1887 when 2 lumberjacks in Wexford County claimed to have encountered the beast. Reports of the Dogman have also persisted across Michigan, especially in the northwest of the Lower Peninsula, with witnesses describing its glowing blue or amber eyes and long, terrifying limbs. While the Dogman had been a relatively unknown figure for much of its history, it gained widespread attention in 1987 when disc jockey Steve Cook from Traverse City recorded a song titled The Legend. Meant to be a playful April Fool's Day prank, the song unexpectedly resonated with listeners, many of whom called in to share their own experiences with the creature matching the Dogman's description. Despite initially inventing the song based on various North American legends, Cook was surprised by the influx of stories, suggesting that people had been encountering something beyond explanation for decades. Sightings of the Dogman have been reported in 10-year cycles, notably in years ending in 7. In one notable encounter from 1937, a man named Robert Fortney claimed that one of the wild dogs attacking him stood upright on 2 legs before fleeing. Other reports of a similar beast emerged in the 1950s and 1960s, keeping the legend alive across Michigan. Although skepticism surrounds the existence of the Dogman, the stories still persist, with many locals convinced that something strange lurks in Michigan's backwoods. Florida Muck Monster. The Muck Monster is a cryptid reportedly seen in Lake Worth Lagoon in Palm Beach County, Florida. This creature first came to public attention in late August 2009 when Greg Reynolds and Dan Serrano, members of the non-profit organization Lagoon Keepers, had an unusual encounter while attempting to remove what they thought was a log from the lagoon. As they approached the object, it suddenly moved, diving below the water each time their boat got within 10 feet. Serrano, watching the strange occurrence, called it an elusive muck monster, giving the creature its now famous name. Reynolds captured video evidence of the event, showing the object moving quickly beneath the water's surface. The footage then quickly garnered attention online, drawing interest from both the public and local officials. While the creature's appearance remains unknown, the footage of the muck monster sparked a flurry of speculation about what it could be. In the wake of the sighting, the muck monster became a bit of a local celebrity. Palm Beach officials saw the opportunity to capitalize on the creature's sudden fame. City Commissioner William Moss even secured funding for a telescope installation at a spot where the footage was captured, allowing tourists to search the lagoon for the creature. The local community even embraced the cryptid, with t-shirts featuring the muck monster sold to support the Lagoon Keepers' non-profit organization, and even a tiki bar offering a muck monster special on their drink menu. But despite the buzz, marine biologists remained cautious in their assessments. Thomas Rayner, a biologist with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation, examined the footage and offered his thoughts. While he didn't have a definitive explanation for what Reynolds and Serrano saw, he pointed out that common aquatic animals like dolphins, sea turtles, or manatees typically break the surface of the water. A shark, he noted, would show a fin, which was not seen in the footage. Rayner speculated that it was one animal moving through the lagoon, though the exact species remained unidentified. "I can't definitely say what it was," he admitted, leaving the creature's identity still in mystery. And the muck monster's place in local folklore was cemented when Palm Beach Mayor Louis Frankel declared it an official citizen of the city. The creature became more than just a cryptid, but more a symbol of the local community's creativity and ability to find fun in the unexplained. New Jersey, Gator Man. The Gator Man is a cryptid that reportedly haunted the swamplands of New Jersey and New York during the 1970s. Described as a humanoid alligator, sightings of this strange creature began in the summer of 1973, particularly in the New and Lafayette area of New Jersey. Eyewitnesses claimed to see a large reptilian figure, with the general consensus being that it resembled a man-sized alligator walking upright. Though the reports were sparse, they were enough to create a local buzz about this swamp-dwelling entity. Folklore surrounding the Gator Man traces back to Native American legends, which spoke of an elusive man-sized fish that could never be caught. While the specific ties between the legend and the Gator Man remain unclear, the comparison offers an interesting cultural context, suggesting that creatures like this have been embedded in local stories for centuries. And what sets the Gator Man apart from other lizardman cryptids is that its existence was publicly acknowledged by a state official, lending an unusual level of credibility to the mystery. In 1977, New York City conservation naturalist Alfred Hellstruck made a public statement about the creature. He described a scaled man-like creature that emerged from the red algae-covered waters of the area's southern tier at dusk to forage among the uplands covered in fern and moss. Though this is the only official comment on the Gator Man, the fact that Hellstruck, a respected city employee, acknowledged the creature at all elevated the cryptid status from mere local legend to something that garnered attention from a wider audience. But despite the public recognition, no actual physical evidence of the Gator Man has ever been produced. Sightings were primarily restricted to that brief window in the 1970s, with accounts of a large humanoid alligator-like figure occasionally seen lurking around the swamps of New Jersey and New York. However, again, no tangible remains, footprints, or other biological evidence have ever been found to substantiate the claims. Explanations for what the Gator Man might have been vary. Some have speculated that it could be an undiscovered species of large alligator, perhaps one that evolved to walk on two legs. Others have theorized that the Gator Man could be a surviving remnant of a prehistoric species, like some crocodilian ancestor that would live during the Eocene epoch. Another hypothesis is that the creature could be a type of evolved dinosaur, an idea that, while appealing to some, draws criticism from those who point out that evolution doesn't necessarily follow a linear path toward humanoid forms. Virginia, Snallygaster. The Snallygaster is a creature that blends the imagery of bird-reptile chimeras with traditional German folklore. Early settlers, particularly German immigrants in the 18th century, feared the Snellergeist, or quick ghost as it was initially called, describing it as a blood-sucking monster that could silently swoop from the sky to snatch its victims. To ward off the creature, 7 pointed stars were often painted on local barns, some of which can still be seen today. Throughout the 19th century, rumors about the Snallygaster persisted, with some suggesting that the legend was used to frighten freed slaves during the period of racial tension following the Civil War. However, it wasn't until the early 20th century that the Snallygaster actually gained significant notoriety. In 1909, sensationalized reports began circulating, describing a fearsome creature with enormous wings, a long pointed bill, claws like steel hooks, and an eye in the center of its forehead. These reports claimed the creature emitted a screech resembling the sound of a locomotive whistle. The media frenzy escalated to the point where the Smithsonian Institution offered a reward for the creature's hide, and even President Theodore Roosevelt reportedly considered delaying an African safari to hunt the beast. As it turned out though, the stories were actually fabricated by George C. Roderick, editor of the Middletown Valley Register, and his reporter Ralph S. Wolf, in a bid to boost readership. Their hoax drew on elements from traditional German folklore and the Jersey Devil, which had also been recently reported in nearby New Jersey. Despite being revealed as a hoax though, the legend still continued to interest. In 1953, writer Whittaker Chambers referenced the creature in an essay to criticize U.S. Senator Joseph McCarthy, likening him to a national snallygaster. In more recent years, the Snallygaster has become a cultural icon, appearing in various media and local traditions. In 2008, author Patrick Boyton published a book chronicling the history of the creature titled Snallygaster, The Lost Legend of Frederick County. The legend even inspired an annual beer festival in Washington, D.C., dubbed the Snallygaster, which started in 2011. The creature has also made its way in popular culture, featuring as an enemy in the video game Fallout 76, and even being incorporated into J.K. Rowling's Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, where it's depicted as a relative of the Occamy. Vermont, Northfield Pigman. The Vermont Pigman, also known as Sam Harris, is a figure rooted in the folklore of Northfield, Vermont, and linked to the disappearance of a 17-year-old boy in 1951. His story weaves together elements of horror, local legend, and cryptid sightings. Sam Harris was described as an ordinary teenager, but on October 30th, 1951, he ventured out for a pick at night, a Halloween tradition known for its mischievous activities. The following day, he had vanished without a trace, prompting an extensive search across miles of rugged terrain. While no evidence of Sam was found, rumors soon began circulating, painting him as something far more sinister. According to the legend, Sam had somehow transformed into a monstrous being covered in white hair and wearing the hollowed-out head of a pig. In this version of the story, he's either possessed or consumed by dark force, doomed to roam the hills around Devil's Washbowl. Tales of the Pigman often involve Sam slaughtering pigs, eating their entrails, and terrifying locals. Some accounts even suggest that he engages in disturbing acts of bestiality, further fueling the horror surrounding his legend. And the most famous sightings occurred years after his disappearance. One particularly famous encounter involved a group of high school students who claimed to have seen a creature that matched Sam's description. It's said that this creature emerged from the woods during a school dance. Similar reports followed, with people claiming to have spotted the pigman scavenging through garbage or lurking near farms where livestock had gone missing. These sightings solidified Sam Harris's transformation into a local legend, one passed down through generations as both a cautionary tale and a source of fear. Alaska, Urauli. The Urauli are reportedly large ape-like creatures that are said to inhabit the dense forests of southwestern Alaska, particularly around Lake Iliamna. Standing at about 10 feet tall, they're described as having long, shaggy fur and glowing eyes, with arms so long that they reach down to their ankles. These creatures are often associated with a haunting, high-pitched cry that echoes through the woods, resembling the call of a loon. According to local lore, the Urauli are peaceful beings, which is a big contrast to the more aggressive cryptid known as the Kushtaka, which comes from southeastern Alaska. The story of the Urauli may have roots in local cautionary tales meant to keep children from wandering the woods at night. It's said that children who become lost in the wilderness are transformed into these mysterious hairy beings, giving the tale a hint of folklore used to instill fear in the younger generations. While comparisons are often made between the Urauli and the hairy man, another cryptid reportedly spotted near Valdez, Alaska, the differences in temperament between the two suggest they may be distinct entities. The hairy man is known to be far more aggressive, whereas the Urauli are considered gentle creatures of the forest. And that's the end, so thank you all so much for watching. If you guys got this far, I appreciate it so much, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.